Chapter 640. Panduola circled around Dake and blinked. "Don't I look good tonight?" Dake replied very solemnly, "Yes, you do." Naturally, Panduola's clothes weren't the only thing that looked good. She was dressed rather casually tonight, and didn't deliberately dress herself up. However, this ordinary outfit didn't seem ordinary on her. It was said that clothes made the man, and saddles made the horse. However, if a person was truly too beautiful, they would naturally be able to turn their plain clothes into gold. But tonight, whether it was her taste in clothes or her demeanor, she was more girlish than usual. Although it wasn't appropriate for a 16-year-old girl, the feeling she gave others was that of a younger person. Is it because I have a family now? Dake thought. Then the two of them compared the credits they earned. Although Dake performed outstandingly in the crusade against Bichimos, he still couldn't compare to Panduola. Remember, https://mvipcanchu. VIP. He had already foreseen the outcome from the beginning. He didn't feel too disappointed and only nodded slightly. "It seems that I've lost." Panduola smiled. "Then does the loser have to pay a price?" Dake replied calmly, "I'm willing to accept my loss." Panduola leaned over and whispered in his ear, "I want to make a deal with you." Dake asked curiously, "What kind of deal?" Senior Panduola didn't directly use the bet to obtain material goods. Instead, she only wanted to obtain the right to make a deal. From this, it could be seen that she had big plans. However, Dake felt that he didn't have enough resources to make her so cautious. Except for those two sacred swords? Could it be that Senior Panduola had taken a fancy to those two sacred swords? Dake couldn't help but reveal some doubts in his eyes. However, Panduola didn't seem to want to say it out loud. "Let's talk about it in detail after the ball. Until then, can I collect some interest?" Dake naturally understood what she meant. But unfortunately, luck was not on his side tonight, so he said directly, "Although I would like to invite you to dance with me, unfortunately, I already have an appointment with someone else." "Who is it?" Panduola did not deny his intentions. However, the name that Dark said next made her feel a little surprised. She originally thought that it would be Deanna or Luosi. When the cheers from the top of the castle gradually subsided, the students excitedly went downstairs to the banquet hall. The roof that had been opened by the appearance of the final boss also closed after everyone left. Seniors and juniors, boys and girls, students and professors, humans and magical elves. Not long after, everyone entered the banquet hall on the first floor. In the hall with 4 long tables, cute white ghosts and burning pumpkin lanterns floated in the air, illuminating the entire banquet hall. Walking into the hall, one could see a dazzling array of Halloween decorations everywhere. Even the tablecloths on the long tables were full of Halloween-style decorations. On the tablecloths, there were all kinds of unique delicacies. Apples smeared with honey exuded a tempting sweetness. Pumpkins with ghost faces carved on them were filled with purple sweet potato and pumpkin porridge. Of course, the meat that was essential for the banquet was also available. Dake Dimming and Panduola Doragon entered side by side, then waved to each other, and went to their respective long tables. Deanna and Luosi had specially reserved a seat for him in the seats of the second year of the Aristocrat Academy. He walked to the middle of the two girls and sat down. Because he was used to it, he didn't feel anything special. Just as he sat down, Deanna came over with bright eyes and whispered in his ear, Dake, are you the one wearing the armor?" Dake took a goblet from the table and said, "That's me." He had never worn the armor in public before, but there was no need to deliberately hide it. "It's really you," Deanna said enviously. "If only I could have this type of armor." Dake encouraged her. "You can definitely do it." Yes. Deanna nodded vigorously. Good luck. Luosi said at the same time. "Let's eat something first. I'm about to faint from hunger." She stood up slightly, picked up a spoon and asked, "Do you want porridge?" After Deanna and Dake nodded in agreement, she scooped a bowl of pumpkin porridge for them, and then a bowl for herself. Although they had received a lot of candy, biscuits, and cakes from the masquerade, they still couldn't fill their stomachs. The food on the table still attracted their attention. Dake picked up the spoon and ate a spoonful. Feeling the hot pumpkin porridge flowing down his throat, he couldn't help but exclaim, "I'm alive!" After evolving the armor into the night god tiger, his stamina was depleted very quickly. Luosi saw him eat some porridge and said with a smile, "Do you know who's number one among the second graders this year?" Dake was startled and asked curiously, "Who's number one?" Luosi winked at Deanna and snickered. "I told you he didn't see the rankings." Deanna pouted and said dryly, "Okay, you first." Luosi couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. "I'm kidding, you first." Dake couldn't help but ask, "What are you talking about?" Luosi said, "We're assigning your ownership rights, so Dake, you didn't agree to the other girls' dance invitations, right?" "Oh, Dake said. "I didn't agree." "Huh." Deanna's eyes widened. Dake said helplessly, "But I lost the bet." "He lost the bet twice." Deanna couldn't help but ask, Who? Dake said, "Betty from the 5th graders' School of Magic." Luosi was puzzled. "Isn't that Panduola Sr.? I saw you guys come in together." Dake couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. "I lost twice." Deanna heard this and looked at Luosi. Then she suddenly said with a smile, "Then there's nothing we can do. But this year's ball shouldn't be like last year's, right?" "I don't think so," Dark guessed. Compared to last year, the professors were obviously more vigilant this year. The fairies flying around the castle were proof of that. Plus, the secret passage hadn't been opened yet. Under such circumstances, it was unlikely that an accident would happen. But speaking of the secret passage, this year's number one student should be able to get a key card, right? After all, if the secret passage was used properly, it would still be very valuable. Moreover, the secret passage was also a natural place for ceremonies, very suitable for refining the secret instrument card. As long as the number of students entering the secret passage was controlled, there shouldn't be any big problems. Well, so who's the number one student in the 2nd grade? Who's going to get the platinum star this year? Dake couldn't help but take out his school card and activate it to check. The first thing that appeared on the card was the overall ranking of his grade. The number one name was impressively Dake Dimung. Sure enough, number one. Dake said in a low voice. After participating in the killing of Bichimos, he received a huge amount of credits, which made his credits in this event jump by 3 levels, reaching nearly 50,000 credits. At that time, he felt that the number one student in the grade should be easily in his hands. But as he continued to look, there were also many AI Ma in 2nd place. Deanna immediately explained, "AI Ma is Bichimos. She summoned the boss of the 3rd floor and killed it." "Is that so? Then her luck is really good." Dake couldn't help but say, "But after she killed the boss, no one tried to snatch it?" Deanna shook her head. "It seems like someone wanted to, but the girls of the Night Academy were protecting her. They said that they wanted the Night Academy to get the golden star." Dake said in realization, "I see." But even if he didn't participate in the killing of Bichimos, AI Ma's credits didn't surpass his. She could only be said to be number one after him. "What a pity," he said. "What a pity, what a pity." Deanna repeated a few words, and then happily ate. If nothing unexpected happened tonight, Dake should also stay in the banquet hall until the end of the dance. The first time, the second time, I'll leave it to Betty and Panduola. After that, she and Luosi will have Dake's everything. Deanna, that's how generous you are. When all the professors were seated, Principal Cynthia St. Aerti walked out from behind the stage. Every year at this time, she would announce the champion of each grade of the masquerade ball, give out the trophy, and officially announce the start of the final carnival of the masquerade ball. For this year's Halloween ball, she still appeared on the stage. Although it was very likely that it wasn't her real body, Dake narrowed his eyes and tried to distinguish between the two, but in the end, he chose to focus on eating his porridge because he really couldn't tell the difference between the real and the fake. And a clone that no one could distinguish between the real and the fake was no different from the real body. Principal Aerti soon began her speech. After the speech ended, she paused, raised her wand and said, "Now let's enter the final award ceremony. First, the 1st grade's Crimson Star. As freshmen, your activity in this masquerade ball is obvious to all. and there are many outstanding performances, but we all know that there can only be one champion. Let's welcome the champion of the first grade, Aurora Montefiore. When Principal Erdei called out Aurora's full name, the audience burst into warm applause. Although this name wasn't as eye-catching as the two princesses or Dimeng, there were many people who knew the surname of the mayor of the Freedom City. Almost all the second-grade students in the aristocratic academy knew that Miss Montefiore would enter Dake Dimeng's room every night. As for why she would enter a man's room late at night, of course, it was to deliver supper. However, since she had such a good relationship with Dake Dimeng, it was natural for her to receive guidance. Therefore, the second-grade students weren't surprised that Aurora was able to win the championship over the two princesses and the four Dimeng. On the other hand, the first-grade students found it difficult to accept this result. The difference in credits between the first-grade students wasn't very big. Whether it was the two princesses, the four Dimeng, the Orc royal family, or the dark elf girl, their credits were very close in the end. It was obviously not easy for Aurora to win first place among such a group of people. However, when Dake turned his head to look at the first-grade students, he found that the two princesses, who were still wearing their leather jackets, didn't seem depressed at all. They were even having fun. Well, being the champion doesn't count as a result. It's fine as long as they have fun. At least they have enough credits to repay their debts. Dake found the names of Victoria, Phoenix, Joey, and John in the first-grade rankings. Seeing that they had obtained a lot of credits, he was relieved. Then, he clapped as he watched Aurora stand up from her seat. Aurora was wearing a black dress, which formed a strong contrast with her silver-white hair. Her straight and slender legs were covered with delicate and soft white stockings, but she wore a pair of black leather shoes on her feet. The strong combination of black and white was not something an ordinary person could withstand. However, her skin was white enough, and her facial features were very delicate, which exuded a unique charm. It was a uniqueness that was completely different from her, who had always been low-key and reserved. When she walked onto the stage, the senior students finally matched Aurora Montefiore's name with her name. The slightly weakened applause just now became enthusiastic again. This was the first time Aurora Montefiore had entered the eyes of justice as a victor. Principal Erdei looked at Aurora with satisfaction. She thought that after the award ceremony, she should report the good news to Mayor Montefiore. She said in a very gentle tone, "Aurora, don't lower your head. You should be more confident." Aurora hurriedly raised her head, and a cute blush appeared on her tender and white face, which was like a freshly peeled egg. *omega \***. It wasn't that she wasn't confident. She was just a little shy. Principal Erdei raised her magic wand and pointed. A huge pumpkin-colored egg appeared above Aurora's head out of thin air. Pa! The bottom of the egg suddenly cracked, and colorful ribbons and pieces of paper instantly shook off. Aurora resisted the urge to immediately dodge, and let the ribbons and pieces of paper fall on her body. Then she raised her hand and received a heavy trophy from Principal Erdei. The front of the trophy was engraved with the words Crimson Star, and the bottom of the trophy was written incantation, deserved. It was exactly the same as the trophy Dake received last year. Aurora lifted the trophy as though it was a light weight. Her heart was filled with joy. When she was in the Duke's mansion, she naturally appreciated Dake's trophy. Then Principal Erdei asked two simple questions, and Aurora softly answered before leaving the stage. Then Principal Erdei turned to look in Dake's direction and said loudly, "Next, let's welcome the champion of the second grade, the winner of the Golden Orange Star, Dake Dimeng." "It's your turn," Deanna and Luosi whispered. Right away." Dake swallowed the bread in his mouth, stood up and walked towards the podium unhurriedly. However, even the first-grade students were not surprised by the fact that he received the Golden Orange Star title. The legend of Dake Dimeng had been circulating in the academy for a long time. Moreover, he was the assistant professor of the first grade. In the words of the two little princesses, it would be surprising if he did not get first place. However, the second-grade students of the Knights Academy were gritting their teeth, and they were not too happy. They originally thought that the Knights Academy would have a chance this year. They did not expect that Dake Dimeng's credits would keep increasing, and the gap between him and AI Ma would only get bigger and bigger. What a pity. Even Luoboat could not help but sigh. However, White, who was beside him, was not happy. He also received the identity of Bichimos, and was lucky enough to find clues about the boss on the 4th floor. However, in the end, he was unable to solve the riddle and summon the boss on the 4th floor. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this now, where they even lost the 2nd place that they got last year. After Dake Dimming walked onto the stage, he received the pumpkin-colored egg baptism. Then he received the trophy and prepared to answer the question from Principal Aerdi. Principal Aerdi only said with a smile, "I hope that our 2nd grade students will be able to pose more of a threat to you in tomorrow's masquerade ball." Dake said calmly, "It's still possible." Principal Aerdi smiled and said, "Do you have any thoughts about being the consecutive champion of the 1st grade?" Dake shook his head and said, "I don't have any thoughts." Principal Aerdi said with a smile, "Then congratulations again. You have won 1st place in this year's Halloween event." Dake slowly walked off the stage amidst the sudden applause. When he returned to his seat, he continued to eat. Then Principal Aerdi continued to announce the awards. The champion of the 3rd grade was a student from the House of Fools who was not very famous. As expected, the champion of the 4th grade was won by Winnie Scatty from the School of Magic. The champion of the 5th grade was also won by Panduola Doragon from the School of Magic. And the champion of the 6th grade was won by Noah Sharp from the School of Knights. Counting carefully, out of the 6th grade champions, 2 each from the School of Nobles and the School of Magic, 1 from the School of Fools and 1 from the School of Knights, it was still acceptable. Then it was finally time for the most popular award, the Platinum Star. The competition for the Platinum Star had always been very fierce. The student who won the Platinum Star would not only receive a huge amount of credits as a reward, but also a rare resource as a reward. Last year, Panduola Doragon had unfortunately lost to a 6th grade student. However, this year's 6th grade student was unable to block her path. Let us warmly congratulate the 5th grade student from the School of Magic, Panduola Doragon, for winning the Platinum Star. Principal Aerdi suddenly raised his magic wand, and bright fireworks bloomed on the stage. In the middle of the fireworks, the magic book emblem of the School of Magic appeared. At this time, Pandora Doragon stepped onto the stage and took the Platinum Star trophy from Principal Arte's hands. After receiving the trophy, she immediately turned to the professor's seats and raised the trophy high in front of Hephaestus. Clap, clap, clap. Hephaestus clapped with all her might, and the applause was thunderous. After Panduola stepped down from the stage, Principal Aerdi said loudly, "The award ceremony is over. Now that Halloween has arrived, allow me to congratulate you. Everyone, happy Halloween." Impassioned music suddenly began to play. The students who had eaten their fill stood up one after another. The students who had agreed to dance also walked to their dance partners. The ball to welcome Halloween had officially begun. In this atmosphere, Dake quickly finished the last mouthful of pumpkin porridge, wiped the corners of his mouth with a wet towel, and got up to walk to the stage. There were no outsiders in tonight's ball, so the students could dance and party to their heart's content without any scruples. Dake met Panduola Doragon at the edge of the stage. Panduola, who had been wearing ordinary clothes when she received the award, suddenly changed into a grand dress. She watched as Dake walked up to her, and took the initiative to reach out her slender hand that was wearing a white lace glove. Dake hesitated for a moment. It wasn't until he saw Betty standing not far away, and saw that she was just standing there and blinking at him, that he realized what was going on. Panduola looked at him with a smile. Dake finally put his hand on her palm. Then the two of them stepped onto the stage together and danced with the other students. As the big stars of this year's masquerade ball, Dake and Panduola had their own aura, and attracted most of the attention as soon as they appeared. The two of them almost immediately became the center of attention. However, they were already used to this level of attention. After they started dancing, they only had eyes for each other. Nirvana +1. Dake didn't let go of her hand until the song ended. Panduola whispered in his ear, "Wait for me after the ball." Then, she floated away and met up with Hephaestus, who had just walked out of the professor's seat. The mother and daughter pair enjoyed their first Halloween ball together. On the other side, White Gouda retracted her gaze and sat in a corner with fresh blood concubine, who had mixed in with the crowd. After Dake's song ended, Betty immediately grabbed him. Betty and Panduola were both fifth-year students of the Magic Academy, so they naturally knew each other. Even if they weren't close before, they were now. In short, she let Dake go for the first time tonight, but she wasn't going to let him go for the second time. Dake immediately started the second dance. When the song ended, senior sister Betty said gently, "Happy Halloween." "Happy Halloween." Dake smiled. Then the two of them separated and walked off the stage. However, as soon as Dake walked off the stage, he was immediately stopped by Deanna and Luosi. Looking at Deanna's outstretched hand, he had no choice but to hold it and return to the stage. Luosi looked at their backs and secretly smiled. She couldn't help but feel a little lonely. Dake was destined to be unable to stop today's ball. Not only Deanna, who wanted to take over his remaining time, but also Luosi, Miss Vampire, and Phoenix, who were quietly waiting for him. There were also the two little princesses who were wearing little bear and tiger skins, who were dancing together with a fighting spirit. He couldn't avoid any of them. He danced one song after another, and his dance partners changed one after another. On the way, he saw his own magic elf and bear cub dancing happily among the crowd. From 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, the Halloween ball finally came to an end when the clock struck the hour. The students who were tired and sleepy left the banquet hall one by one. After the last song with Deanna, Dake said goodbye to her, and also left the banquet hall. Panduola walked out a little later, but she quickly caught up with him. The two of them walked up to the second floor of the castle, and began to trade under the moonlight. "I can give you this." The moment Senior Panduola opened her mouth, Dake was astonished. He looked at the gift box in Senior Panduola's hand, and couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He said, "This is Bichimo's horn?" Panduola nodded slightly and said with a smile, "If you don't want it, I can exchange it for something else, such as dragon scales, dragon blood, or dragon orbs." Dake's eyelids twitched. He asked, "What do you want?" "I don't ask for much," Panduola said slowly. "I have 3 magic elves, and I want you to help them awaken their spiritual intelligence." 3 magic elves. Dake frowned slightly. He had helped Panduola's young winged dragon awaken its spiritual intelligence, so it wasn't strange for Panduola to make such a request. But why 3? He couldn't help but ask which 3. Panduola said in detail, the first, pure white dragon maiden. The second, celestial white dragon. And the third, Bichimo's earth tyrannosaurus. Dake couldn't help but repeat, Bichimo's earth tyrannosaurus? Panduola nodded. "I used Bichimo's horn that I obtained last year to refine into earth tyrannosaurus. Although it doesn't suit my aesthetics, it's a genuine 10-star dragon species." Dake couldn't help but ask, "How did you refine a 10-star dragon species?" Panduola raised a finger and placed it in front of her lips. She said in a low voice, "This is a secret." That's true. Dake realized that he had misspoken. Although Bichimo's horn had always been considered a high-grade material that could be used to refine 4th-rank magic elves, in recent years, there were people who obtained Bichimo's horn almost every year, but there weren't many who succeeded in refining 4th-rank magic elves. To be able to use it and successfully refine a 10-star dragon species, Panduola must have used some unique method. It obviously wasn't something that she could casually divulge. He said, "But since you've already succeeded once, why don't you use Bichimo's horn to refine another 10-star magic elven card?" Panduola sighed. 4th-rank magic elves aren't that easy to refine. In order to refine it, I practically emptied out all the resources that I've painstakingly accumulated over the past few years. I even used an extremely special material as the core before I barely succeeded. Moreover, after refining it in reverse, I discovered that I might have made a loss. Dake, don't be anxious. Panduola smiled again. Bichimo's horn is indeed difficult to deal with, but you can save it and deal with it when you can, or ask the professors to give you some guidance. Dake sighed and said, "Can I take a look at it first?" If this Bichimo's horn was used carelessly, it would be a reckless waste of God's gift. But if it wasn't used carelessly, according to Senior Panduola's words, It might only be used as a primer that would refine magic into the phantom god seed. In that case, its value would change from that of a core material to that of an auxiliary material. The difference could be said to be enormous. But considering that Bichimo's horn was just a component that could be regenerated continuously, Senior Panduola's approach was very likely correct. Dake watched as Senior Panduola opened the gift box and took out a small section of Bichimo's horn. Then he stretched out his hand. Panduola placed Bichimo's horn in his palm and said, "You can feel that it doesn't contain much magic power." Dake closed his eyes and carefully sensed it. After a long while, he had to admit that Panduola's words were true. The magic power contained within this section of Bichimo's horn was much weaker than he had imagined. But if it was only used as a primer to refine the phantom god seed. "Do you think I lack this stuff?" Dake couldn't help but think. He lacked a lot of things, but he didn't lack primers like this. If Bichimo's horn couldn't be used as a core material to refine a fourth-step magic guiding fairy, then its value to him would be greatly reduced. Rather than that, he might as well exchange it for high-grade materials such as dragon scales, dragon pearls, and dragon blood. With enough high-grade dragon-type materials, he would be able to start researching the refinement of the blue-eyed white dragon. Moreover, high-grade dragon-type materials could be used together with dragon grass to refine even if they were ordinary materials. That was indeed much more suitable than Bichimo's horn. Moreover, from the bottom of his heart, he believed that he didn't need Bichimo's horn as a price at all to help the three magic guiding fairies gain intelligence. Because it was simply too easy for him. "How about this, just exchange it for some dragon-type materials for me," Dake finally confirmed. Then he returned Bichimo's horn to Panduola. If he really wanted Bichimo's horn, next year or the year after, he would have plenty of opportunities to obtain it with his own hands, and not from others. Bichimo's horn was a unique material of the Shungmalian Academy, so it still had some value beyond the material itself. The significance of obtaining it with one's own hands was much greater than obtaining it from others. Panduola put Bichimo's horn back into the gift box and said, "Since you don't want Bichimo's horn, I will prepare dragon-type materials of equivalent value. But it will take some time before I can give them to you. Do you have any specific requirements for the quality, type, or part?" Dake thought for a while and said, "I hope it's a white dragon material of higher quality. I don't have too many requirements for the specific part, but it would be better if there's a white dragon pearl. In addition, other types of dragon-type materials can also be obtained. Although it's a pity, I'm still at the stage of confirming the target based on the materials. I haven't reached the stage of choosing materials based on the target. I'll do my best to prepare it properly," Panduola said cheerfully. Dake didn't refuse. He was also very clear that to other people, being able to awaken intelligence for their own magical fairy was something that they yearned for even in their dreams. In fact, if he wanted to, he could use this ability to exchange for a large amount of resources. But firstly, he hadn't reached the resource shortage stage yet. Secondly, this was the power of a demon god. If he revealed too much, it would be a great threat to himself. "Let's start with pure white dragon maiden." Dake looked around and said, "Up until now, all the Great Sin cards he had on him had finished their cooldown. According to the attributes of the magical fairy, he could choose a suitable Great Sin card to awaken intelligence for it. For example, this pure white dragon maiden was a demi-human, draconian, and a dragon-type plus fairy. The two opposing attributes were wonderfully stacked together, giving it an extremely rare ability. Using Bliss's Great Sin card to awaken intelligence was the most suitable. As a dragon-type and a dragon-type plus light-type, the Sky White Dragon was more suitable for Pride's Great Sin card. Although he didn't do much research, Dake roughly believed that the difference in the Great Sin card used to awaken intelligence was very likely to have a permanent impact on the magical fairy's personality. Therefore, he couldn't be too casual when choosing the Great Sin card. Panduola didn't say much and directly summoned the pure white dragon maiden by the window. She didn't use a sacrificial summoning spell, but a secret special summoning spell. Dake's eyelids twitched when he saw this. She had actually directly summoned a 6-star magic guiding fairy. Seeing his surprise, Panduola smiled and said, I rarely do this in a duel. After all, there are some external factors involved. But it's not a problem to tell you. My dragon maiden can be specially summoned without any sacrifices as long as a white dragon is present. It's the same type of sure kill skill effect as Vampire's secret ritual of Daughter of the Vampire. Dake expressed that he understood. As for why Panduola could directly summon the pure white dragon maiden on the spot, it was naturally because her existence could satisfy the special summoning conditions of the pure white dragon maiden. This effect made him very tempted. This pure white dragon maiden could be used together with the primordial dragon egg. After using the dragon egg to hatch the young blue-eyed dragon, he could summon the pure white dragon maiden seamlessly. If he drew 2 6-stars at the same time in the first round, just thinking about it scared him. Dake walked in front of the pure white dragon maiden to observe. Upon closer inspection, the pure white dragon maiden's face was somewhat similar to Senior Panduola's. She had dragon horns on her head and a cold face. The white battle robe on her body clung tightly to her graceful body, accentuating her figure perfectly. There was also a long spear slanted behind her back that was as red as blood. Senior. Dake turned around and said. Panduola understood and turned around. With her back facing Dake, she left the pure white dragon maiden for him to deal with. Dake then took out a Bliss 3 card from the deck. After silently reciting that the summoning was successful, he faced the Bliss 3 card at the pure white dragon maiden. Under the golden pink light, the pure white dragon maiden's cold face melted little by little. In the end, her brows relaxed and a deep sense of joy appeared on her face. Dake suddenly took a step back and quickly said, Senior, it's done. Please recall it. When Panduola turned around, she cancelled the pure white dragon maiden summoning. Dake let out a sigh of relief and said, It will take at least 15 minutes for it to return to a state where it can think normally. Got it. Panduola looked at the pure white dragon maiden's card and suppressed her urge to communicate with it. She raised her head and said, Next, is it the sky white dragon? Dake said decisively, If it's the sky white dragon, why don't we summon it in the secret passage? Secret passage? Panduola was puzzled. Dake said, The secret passage can hide most of the aura. And it's big enough. After Panduola became the Platinum Star, she received the door card as a reward. Under Dake's urging, she activated the door card and said helplessly, I'm actually not that interested in the secret passage. Dake waved his door card and said with a smile, But the door cards have the ability to communicate with each other. As long as I'm in the academy, I can receive your messages. Pandora's interest was piqued. Is it a structure similar to the branch card? Dake said, Yes, but the campus card can only receive messages, while the door card can send messages. Panduola was slightly excited. So if I want to find you in the future, I only need to use this door card? That's right. Dake suggested, Do you want to try it? Panduola immediately nodded and studied it for a long time. Finally, she used the door card to send a message to Dake. Hello. Dake also used the door card to reply. Good evening, Senior. Panduola quickly typed. Good evening to you too. The moon is nice tonight. Happy Halloween. Dake. Happy Halloween. The two walked side by side and looked down at the door card in their hands. They were right next to each other, but they only used the door card to send messages to each other. It was like the first time you got a phone and added a friend of the opposite sex on QQ. Panduola was having a lot of fun as if she got a new toy. Dake felt nostalgic and couldn't help but immerse himself in it. Unknowingly, the two entered the secret passage. Panduola suddenly came back to her senses and blushed. Do I summon the celestial white dragon here? Dake also looked up and said, Yes. Soon, a white dragon that was close to 20 meters long flew out of the special summoning array. It stretched its limbs in the air and emitted a gentle glow. Come here. Panduola called the celestial white dragon back and ordered it to stay put. She quickly turned around. Dake took out Pride 3 and pointed the card at the celestial white dragon's huge head. He quickly summoned it. Under the illumination of the dark golden light, the sky white dragon expression changed at an extremely fast speed. Roar! It suddenly raised its head and roared. Its dragon aura was even more terrifying than before, and it emitted a piercingly cold aura. When the roar ended, it looked down like a real dragon with the arrogance of looking down on ants. Panduola suddenly turned around and looked at the celestial white dragon with joy. The most direct feeling she had right now was that the celestial white dragon was alive. 54 of 139. The Halloween reward is 12 chapters. As expected, it's not much. It's been added and will be paid back as soon as possible. Today is also a 10,000-word chapter. Brothers, don't stop buying tickets and blades. In the situation where the subscriptions are falling, only the tickets can be consoled. Degree woo woo good night. Chapter 641. Pure White Dragon Maiden and Sky White Dragon. They were the magical spirits that Panduola had refined at the beginning of her second year and the end of her third year. As the Pure White Dragon Maiden had the ultimate skill, White Dragon Princess, it could be specially summoned without any sacrifice in the presence of a white dragon. Therefore, whenever Panduola needed to do something, it would be summoned as an assistant. In addition, the core materials used to refine the Pure White Dragon Maiden were provided by herself, so there was a natural bloodline connection between them. She had always treated it as her family. As a result, the vague bond that was gradually established allowed the Pure White Dragon Maiden to gain some spirituality. However, she was not satisfied with that little spirituality, especially after the winged dragon whelp was awakened by Dake. She wanted the Pure White Dragon Maiden to gain spirituality and become a true family member. This was what Panduola had always thought. When she added the Sky White Dragon and Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus to the deal, it was more for the sake of increasing her strength. Website: https://m.vipcanchu. VIP. Although the reunion with her mother, Hephaestus, made her feel the warmth of a family, at the same time, it also brought about an extremely urgent anxiety. This was because Hephaestus Doragon was still a criminal wanted by the Holy Church. The Shungmalian Academy could protect her for a while, but it could not protect her for life. If Panduola wanted to protect her mother, she had to become stronger. She slowly walked in front of the Sky White Dragon and opened her arms to it with a smile on her face. The Sky White Dragon's arrogance actually slowly disappeared after staring at her for a long time. Its huge head with antlers drooped down and fell between Panduola's arms. Panduola stroked the Sky White Dragon's face and smiled like a flower. Dake stood at the side and watched quietly. He was actually quite surprised that the Sky White Dragon actually let go of its arrogance under the gaze of Panduola. Maybe this is the dragon's personality? A few minutes later, Panduola finally let go of her arm, but she did not put the celestial white dragon back into the card. This was because Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex required a third-tier offering. After offering a 1-star magical elf and a 9-star sky dragon as sacrifices, Panduola finally summoned a 4th-tier magical elf, Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus. Roar! When the 10-star elfin walked out of the sacrificial summoning array, a powerful aura comparable to that of the final boss, Bichimo's, spread out like a storm. Unfortunately, the two people standing in front of it were not people who would be shocked by this level of aura. Even so, Dake still raised his head and sighed. So this is a dragon refined using Bichimo's horn? Panduola nodded and said, he inherited Bichimo's earth attribute. He's a Tyrannosaurus Rex of dragon and earth attribute. Dake couldn't help but observe carefully. This, Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex, was even bigger than Noah Sharp's Redridge Black Dragon, in terms of size. It was basically a Tyrannosaurus Rex without wings. The huge curved horns on its head were almost the same as Bichimo's horns. According to Panduola's words, it should be the same as Bichimo's. It couldn't fly. As a phantom god seed, Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex emitted an aura that was mixed with some divinity. Even though that trace of divinity was so small that it was undetectable, Dake was still quite familiar with this aura, and could somewhat smell it. He just didn't know if Hypostasis +1 was one of its characteristics. The Magus divided the magical elf into 4 tiers. The fourth tier was theoretically the highest tier. No matter how high its star level rose, it couldn't escape this framework. However, if it had the characteristic of hypostasis plus 1, it could reach the legendary fifth tier. The Magus called it divine tier. Senior, Dake voiced his doubts. Panduola shook her head with slight regret and said, "It's not enough." "That's really a pity," Dake sighed slightly and said, "I'm going to start." Panduola nodded and said, "Okay, I'll turn around." Dake shook his head helplessly. "Actually, I wanted to say it just now. There's no need." There was really no need. He reached into his card bag and directly took out the third Great Sin card, Greed 3. Greed pointed to Saturn, and its main attributes were rock and ground. Since Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex was a ground-type phantom god seed, there was no mistake in using Greed 3. Panduola didn't turn around this time. Instead, she openly looked at the magic card in Dake's hand. In fact, the aura released by Dake when he used the Great Sin card was very obvious. Even if she turned around and didn't look, she could guess 90% of it. The fact that Dake was willing to use it by her side was already a sign of trust. However, she was still very happy that Dake said it himself. "In the name of Dake Dimming, I summon the magic card, Awaken, Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex." Before his voice died away, Dake raised Greed 3 high up. The bluish-purple radiance shot out from the card's surface and shone on Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex. After this ferocious-looking Tyrannosaurus Rex absorbed the power of greed. Endless greed gushed out from the depths of its eyes. With the passage of time, greed would recede. However, its spiritual wisdom that had been awakened would not disappear. Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex suddenly bent down and let out a thunderous roar at the two tiny humans on the ground. The two people's hair was blown back by the strong wind caused by this. Dake couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Panduola, on the other hand, immediately issued a forceful command. However, at that moment, the aura emitted by Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex suddenly underwent a subtle change. Dake couldn't help but reveal a somewhat strange expression after noticing that slight change. Panduola's senses were just as sharp. After a brief moment of astonishment, she immediately raised the card, Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex, in front of her, and injected her magic power to examine it. "How is it?" Dake asked. Panduola raised her head and slowly said, "It's here." Dake asked, "What's here?" Panduola looked at Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex and said in astonishment, "Hypostasis plus 1. Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex, whose eyes were filled with greed, froze in place under the forceful command of the Magus. Gradually, a blackish-purple radiance appeared on the surface of its body. The divinity that was originally indiscernible had actually increased tremendously. If its original divinity was only 0.01, then its current divinity was at least 1. From a negligible decimal, it had become a whole number. This meant that it had truly awakened the hypostasis of a phantom god. Although this divinity was still incomparable to Dake's Basti Beast and Moon God, it was still a breakthrough for it. Panduola stared at the Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex that had undergone a drastic change, the astonishment on her face lingering for a long time. It was only after she had stored Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus Rex into the card that Panduola said solemnly, "It seems that I have received an unimaginable favor." Dake smiled faintly and said, "This is only a transaction of equal value." Panduola gave a rare wry smile and said, "If it's equal," Dake said, "don't take it to heart. This is also an unexpected change for me. However, we can't overturn the agreed-upon transaction because of a sudden increase in the price of a commodity. Let's go according to the original agreement." Panduola took a deep breath and said with a smile, "I understand." Dake nodded and said, "That's good. Since the intelligence of the three magical spirits has been awakened, it's about time for us to go back." Panduola replied, "That's true. Let's go back." The two of them walked side by side toward the entrance of the secret passage. The torches on both sides of the secret passage lit up one after another, illuminating the path ahead. The footsteps of the two gradually synchronized in the quiet night. Dake lowered his head slightly, thinking about the changes in Bichimo's Tyrannosaurus rex, and the meaning it represented. Panduola was also digesting the shock in her heart. She had a deeper understanding of the power Dake possessed. Unknowingly, they had already exited the secret passage and returned to the passage of the castle. Then Dake turned around slightly, preparing to discuss with Panduola where to go next. But just as he turned around, he suddenly smelled an extremely close fragrance. Then a deep and moist mark was left on his cheek. In the blink of an eye, Panduola Doragon's figure disappeared. Dake's eyes widened. He raised his hand and touched his right cheek, confirming that he had indeed been ambushed. You don't talk about martial virtues. His heart started to thump loudly. The notifications of bliss' growth kept floating in front of his eyes. This made him quickly come back to his senses, and he used Underworld Spirit spell to suppress the growth of bliss. Tonight's deal was quite profitable. After that, Dake didn't immediately return to the tower. Instead, he enjoyed the breeze on Lover's Bridge for a while, thinking about the meaning of life. Only then did he walk toward the tower. Tonight was a special time. The academy didn't have a curfew. Dake pushed open the door of the tower and found that there were still students playing in the common lounge. He avoided the heat wave and went straight up the stairs, arriving at the door of dorm 301. It was already 2:40 a.m. on November 1st. But because Halloween was on Friday this year, the next 3 days were all holidays. The students could sleep until they woke up naturally without worrying about having their credits deducted by the professors. Click. Dake opened the door and entered. The dorm room was very quiet. Although the magic elves had returned early, they didn't continue to make noise in the room. Most of them had already climbed onto their small beds. They were either closing their eyes to take a nap or lying down to read. When he walked into the room, the magic elves all turned to look at him. Then, those that were sleeping went to sleep, and those that were reading continued to read. The sound of Kitty Grass's steady breathing came from the cradle at the head of the bed. Dake tiptoed into the bedroom. He took out the cane hanging at his waist and slowly put it down. Then he took off his coat, took out his pajamas from the closet, and quietly crept into the bathroom. After washing up, he walked out of the bathroom. He glanced at the 2 holy swords hanging on the wall, and the backpack full of loot. Suddenly he remembered something. I forgot to give Victoria a present. Forget it, I'll think about it tomorrow. Dake happily climbed onto the bed. Just as he was about to close his eyes and sleep, the card bag at the head of the bed suddenly vibrated. He took the card bag with some doubt and pulled out. It wasn't the school card, but the door card. What's the matter? Dake activated the door card by injecting magic power, then opened the door card. Senior Panduola? She's so late. What's up? Dark opened the message and saw that there were only 2 words in the letter. Good night. Good night. Dake typed the same words and sent it over. Then he put the door card at the head of the bed and crawled into bed. That night, he slept very soundly. The corners of his mouth were raised the entire time. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the autumn sun shone into the room. Dake woke up in the arms of 2 beauties. He rubbed his eyes and reached out to pinch Fairy Ibu's little paws. Then he happily got out of bed and washed up. It was the first morning of November. There were many things he needed to take care of, but that would be after breakfast. On the desk, there was already a food basket with newspapers. Little Fiend wrapped it in a thick towel to prevent the internal heat from leaking out. After washing up, Dake sat in front of the desk and took off the towel. He ate the still warm breakfast and gave Little Fiend a little red flower as a reward. Halloween. The Great Sage Daily and Clown Daily both use special holiday pages. Most of the information they published was related to Halloween, especially the various things that happened on the eve of Halloween. Some things were very interesting, and some things were completely unfunny. Dake finished reading all of it. His mood didn't change at all. Then he put the cutlery back in the food basket and had Little Fiend return it. Then he summoned the system list. System, expand the list. Pride, 9292. Envy, 4343. Rage, 9291. Sloth, 6060. Greed, 9894. Gluttony, 8790 Bliss, 9398. In the last absorption in October, Dake chose Pride. At that time, his Great Sin Index had been suppressed to below 90, but after 20 days of suffering, all the indices increased again. Pride's growth was still within an acceptable range, and Rage's growth was also under control. However, Greed had increased back to 94 after absorbing 8 points last month. It was obvious that greed was human nature, and it was hard to control. The growth of Gluttony was actually under control. When it reached 94 points, Dake would consider taking 4 points and use 3 of them to cultivate Gluttony to study Gluttony. Finally, there was the growth of Bliss. On the 10th of October, Bliss was only at 90 points. Now, it had increased by 8 points and became the highest value Great Sin. Although this was to be expected, it was still a pity. Dake smiled helplessly and calculated the remaining Great Sin reserves. Pride for Greed, 10 Bliss 0, Rage 1, it's okay. Although I've always wanted to save more, I feel like I can't. Dake recorded the data, opened his backpack, and began to calculate what he had obtained last night. Basically, all the materials were obtained by conquering resource points, but occasionally, special ghosts would drop gift boxes. Therefore, he had obtained more than 20 materials last night. However, most of them were normal materials, and they could even be bought in Traveler Street. The 50,000 academic credits he had obtained from the Masquerade Ball had made his academic credit reserves rich again. He divided the materials into 2 portions, and then arranged the higher quality ones according to the order he had obtained them. Ocean Ice Shell, Soul Orb King of Specters, Black Tide Gem, Black Tide Octopus, Worm Silver, Abyss Worm, Soul Orb Dark Mummy, Ghost Snake Magic Crystal, Ghost Snake, Water Elemental Bead, Water Elemental. Ocean Ice Shell was an item he had obtained after conquering the 6th resource point. Its grade was relatively low, but the ice element it contained was very pure. It was a more suitable material for refining an ice-type magic elf. Black Tide Gem was the gem he had obtained after killing the octopus monster hiding in the dark when he conquered the 8th resource point. It contained rich dark and water elemental energy. As for Worm Silver, Ghost Snake Magic Crystal, and Water Elemental Bead, there was no need to mention them. The remaining 2 soul orbs came from the elite ghosts of the 7th and 10th resource points respectively. However, the soul orb dropped by the Dark Mummy was completely inferior to the soul orb dropped by the King of Specters, in terms of quality. In summary, among these 7 items the rarest Worm Silver was the Worm Silver. The highest grade was the Ghost Snake Magic Crystal, the Water Elemental Bead, Worm Silver, and the soul orb dropped by the King of Specters were of the same grade. After that were the Black Tide Gem, and the soul orb dropped by the Dark Mummy. Ocean Ice Shell was of the lowest grade, but it might be able to be used to refine Big Tongue Shell. Big Tongue Shell could evolve into Spiked Shell, a defense-specialized Pokemon. However, considering that there was no Jealousy Great Sin card that represented the water element, this was actually not a good idea. Dake's main focus was on the Spirit type, Soul Orb, and Ghost Snake Magic Crystal. Now that Bliss had skyrocketed, it was suitable for refining a Spirit-type magic elf. Considering that the Ghost Snake Magic Crystal was too specialized and the King of Specters, a Soul Orb was more suitable. Dake temporarily locked onto this Soul Orb. After I draw enough Bliss, I'll consider refining it. It's also time to add a new family member. Dake carefully observed the pitch-black and round Soul Orb, and could not help but smile. When it came to the Spirit type, the first thing he thought of was the Ghosty family. Ghosty, Gungua. Then there was the previously mentioned pink magic elf, Soroya. Soroya had 2 forms. One was the evil-type Evil Fox Pokemon, and the other was the normal-type plus Spirit-type Resentment Fox Pokemon. Soroya, from the Washing Jade region, was originally a fox cub. Its body was grayish-pink, and its pupils were orange. The long fur on its neck was like a scarf, and its limbs, the area around its eyes, and the protruding flame-shaped fur on its head were all pinkish-white. Even though it often looked like it was complaining, it still could not hide its cuteness. As for the evolved Curse Fox Pokemon, Soroya, It was also very handsome, considering that Soroya and Sorajak were the only fox Pokemon with the ghost type, and that he happened to have Fox Grass. There was a high chance that the basic refining result would be locked onto it. Of course, Bliss's reserves were currently 0, and there was a high chance that he would refine Clown Mask first, so there was no need to be too anxious. In the future, he might be able to come up with a better result. Let's put it aside for now. It's Halloween today, and there's the opening ceremony of the Golden Cup in the afternoon. I can't be held back by experiments. Dake closed his notebook and sorted out all the materials before starting to prepare Halloween gifts. Halloween wasn't Christmas, so there wasn't much meaning in giving gifts. Basically, giving each other candy and biscuits was enough. Dake's main target was Victoria. He wanted to wrap up the blood crystal and holy sword of blood and give them away. It couldn't be helped. The White Gouda hadn't been able to obtain a new holy sword during this period. If he couldn't exchange it with someone, giving it to Victoria was the best choice. I wonder how she will use these 2 gifts. Dake thought absent-mindedly. Victoria was a student of the House of Fools. However, on Halloween, Traveler's Street opened early. She would most likely drag Phoenix to Traveler's Street to shop. However, if Dake wanted to find her or summon her to his side, it wouldn't be difficult. Of course, he wouldn't summon her to his side without permission. After preparing everything, Dake walked out of his dorm and headed to Traveler's Street. Traveler's Street was bustling with people and was very lively. The students didn't seem to enjoy themselves at last night's masquerade party. There were still many students in costume walking back and forth on the street. Dake first went to the Ultimate Duel Club shop and chatted with Eve. When Victoria took the bait, he threw the blood crystal and holy sword of blood to her. "What's this?" Victoria asked curiously with her eyes wide open. "A gift." Dake glanced at her. Victoria immediately said, "I know it's a gift, but what's in the box? Why is it emitting such a fragrant smell? Can I open it here?" "No," Dake said decisively. "Go back to the dorm and take a look." Victoria exclaimed, "How can this be?" Dake reminded her, "By the way, it's time to return the credits you borrowed." "You really have to return them?" Victoria exclaimed again. Dake rolled his eyes. "Of course." Victoria said, "Okay." She reluctantly took out her school card and returned the borrowed credits to Dake. Then, Phoenix also returned the 1,000 credits that had been borrowed. Dake gave her a Halloween gift. After Victoria and Phoenix left hand in hand, Dake finally got up and said to Eve, "I'm leaving. Happy Halloween." "Happy Halloween." Eve smiled and sent him to the door. Dake thought for a while and said, "Also, help me say Happy Halloween to Irene. Also, I'll come again tonight. Be prepared." "Yes, young master." Eve bowed slightly. Dake nodded and left Traveler's Street. When Victoria returned to the dorm and opened the gift box, she was pleasantly surprised. After leaving Traveler's Street, Dake went to the club classroom. Keeping his promise, he would leave Big Milk Can in the club classroom to take care of the cat grass and little Auntie Bird. Then he put Curse Cage, Sub-Beast into the deck. Big Milk Can had a great time at last night's masquerade party, so it gladly agreed to this situation. The Sub-Beast jumped excitedly, but Dake shook his head and said, "Don't be happy too early. I did sign up for the Golden Cup, but this holiday's schedule will be released after the opening ceremony, so it might not be my turn. Even if it's my turn, you might not be able to participate." The Sub-Beast's expression froze, and it suddenly didn't want to jump anymore. Dake laughed and patted its head. "Don't worry, there will always be a chance." The opening ceremony of the Golden Cup was held at 2 in the afternoon. At that time, as a close partner of the Shungmalian Academy, the representative of the Citizen Duel Club, Ms. Eve, would also be on the stage. The purpose of her appearance was naturally to promote the simulated duel Halloween-themed cards. At that time, all the branches of St. Marian College would display Halloween-themed duel discs, as well as Halloween-themed Easter eggs containing models and cards. There would be a probability that a Halloween-themed limited edition card would be opened inside. The promotion of the simulated duel had been done very well so far, and the sales were increasing day by day. It had completely shown the trend of being popular all over the country. There were many people who paid a lot of money to get rare cards. When the simulated duel really became popular, both the Citizen Duel Club and the Shung Malian Academy would make a lot of money. As for the rules of the Golden Cup, it was not much different from the Silver Cup. The Golden Cup was also divided into the points competition and the main competition. The students who stood out in the points competition would be able to enter the main competition. The number of people in the main competition of the Golden Cup was twice the number of people in the Silver Cup. There would be a total of 16 people who could enter the main competition. Before the double elimination system, there would be a round of home games. The other rules of the competition were basically the same as the Silver Cup. Every participant had to go through at least 10 duels in the points competition. After 10 duels, the accumulated points would enter the rankings. The top 16 participants on the points competition would enter the main competition. When Dake came to the cafeteria, he found that the topic among the students had completely changed from Halloween to the Golden Cup. The Golden Cup every year was a grand event for the students of the academy. The duelists participated in the competition to hone their skills and improve quickly. The audience watched the competition to increase their knowledge and get pleasure from it. The bloody battles between the seniors were obviously more exciting than the fights between the juniors. Therefore, the Golden Cup received far more attention than the Silver Cup. However, this year's second-year duelists were all ordered to participate in the Golden Cup. They were like lambs that had sneaked into a pack of wolves. No one knew what kind of impact they would bring to the Golden Cup. As long as the second year was mentioned, the first seat of the second-year students, Dake Dimming, couldn't escape. As soon as Dake sat down, he heard the students at the 2 tables behind him saying his name. He shook his head slightly and buried his head in eating. He didn't know what would happen to the other second-year duelists, but he knew that he would go very far. When he thought about how he would be able to win against the 3rd, 4th, and even 5th years on the duel stage, he couldn't suppress his excitement. People only felt the meaning of life when they challenged the higher places. It was the same for duelists. "We finally found you, Dake." The 2 little princesses sat opposite Dake, one on his left and one on his right. Dake opened his mouth and said, "Are you here to return the money?" "Hey, it's credits." And she emphasized. "Yeah, it sounds bad to return the money," Anna immediately agreed. Although they didn't seem to have a close relationship on the surface, their personalities and temperaments were the same as their appearances. It was as if they were made from the same mold. Dake took out his school card, placed it on the table, and said, "Come." "Really?" Anna and Anchi also took out their school cards and returned the debt. Dake asked, "How was it? Did you have fun last night?" As soon as they talked about last night, the 2 little princesses instantly opened their mouths. They proudly talked about their glorious deeds last night and counted the students who were scared to death by them. Dake's eyebrows twitched when he saw how proud they were. If these 2 girls were his, he might have picked up a stick to kill them. Unfortunately, they weren't. "Good afternoon, can I sit here?" As the 2 little princesses were talking, Aurora came to the side with a tray. Of course, Dake wouldn't refuse her, so she asked the little princesses opposite her. The 2 little princesses instantly fell silent. Aurora tacitly agreed and sat down. As soon as she sat down, she said helplessly, "Last night, I didn't do it on purpose. I couldn't control myself." The 2 little princesses looked at each other. Anna said with an open-minded expression, "It's okay, Aranchi is so magnanimous. She's not angry at all." And she immediately pouted and said, Yes, and she isn't angry, but the stingy Anna is." "I'm not angry," Anna said angrily. And she made a face and said, "Ha ha ha." Dake said helplessly, "Be quiet when you eat. At least maintain your princess image in public." Anna and Anchi said at the same time, "That's our personality. Even if people see us, they will only say that we are very energetic." Dake said, "Naughty." Anna laughed carelessly and finally started to eat. And she glanced at Aurora and suddenly said, "You borrowed it too?" Aurora took out her school card and paid the debt without hesitation. "Yes." And she snorted and said, "Then I lost a little. I heard that you can join the dueling club next semester. Let's compete then." Aurora simply replied, "Yes." Day couldn't help but be curious. What happened between them? However, he knew that now was not the time to ask. It was best to close the door and slowly ask at night. The atmosphere before the start of the Golden Cup was not as peaceful as it was now. After knowing that the second-year duelists would participate in the Golden Cup, some of the upperclassmen secretly revealed their malice. Let's show those overconfident juniors what a real duel is. Similar words could be heard everywhere. As for those who already had grudges with some of the second-year students, they even wanted to execute them in the dueling arena. Some people who were dead, but not dead, were also fantasizing about the possibility of a comeback. The upperclassmen were not all friendly. What's more, there was competition among the major schools. If they could take the opportunity to suppress the students of other schools and strangle the seedlings of hope, it would be greatly beneficial to their own school. The problems that existed in the Golden Cup might be magnified due to the large number of second-year students entering the Golden Cup. And among them, Dake Dimung was obviously not to be trifled with, but there were also many people who had their eyes on him. A large number of them were people who had their blood sucked by him last night. Those upperclassmen who were defeated in the duel gritted their teeth and waited for the opportunity to take revenge. There were also all kinds of people with ulterior motives who had their eyes on the Golden Cup. This year's second-year students might really not be underestimated. But no one thought that they could go too far. The afternoon sun was warm, and the open-air duel arena was painted with a layer of bright gold. It was really golden. Just like the opening ceremony of the Silver Cup, the school added a layer of gold to the open-air duel arena, causing the arena to suddenly become majestic and noble. At 1:30 a.m., all the students in the academy swarmed into the dueling hall. The Golden Cup did not have any requirements for the seats of the audience. The students could freely choose their seats. As a result, the students of the four schools were clearly divided into four groups. Dake was lucky enough to get a seat in the first row. Next to him were the second-year students of the Aristocrat Academy. Deanna and Luosi sat on his left. The two of them did not feel nervous at all because of the opening ceremony of the Golden Cup. The frequent duels and dungeon exploration had indeed trained their minds. Dake and Doran, who was on his right, whispered to each other as they waited for the opening ceremony to arrive. Soon, the ring-shaped auditorium was neatly filled with people. The host, Senior Judy, who had changed into a golden dress, went up the raised stage a little earlier. Today, she was even more luxurious and charming. Along with the elegant melody, she raised her hand and let the little elf in the princess dress land on her palm. She gently flicked the forehead of the familiar, and then let it fly away. Almost at the same time, the projections of the audience from all the major regions appeared in the auditorium outside the arena. In the area of the Royal City's duel arena, Claire, who had returned to the Royal City, appeared in the first row with Arvette as expected. Beside Arvette was Silver Wolf Knight, Camilla and Viscountess Flotty. The motherly group formed by the three of them became more and more familiar with each other. And because of this, the three families became closer and closer. Claire even invited Viscountess Flotty to join the business network of the Duel of the Whole People. Like the Eugenie Chamber of Commerce, she would be responsible for the sales of the Duel of the Whole People. The Flotty family was already far away from the power center of the royal city. Finding one or two trustworthy agents to develop the business could be considered as working hard to protect the family business. Therefore, they quickly agreed. Not long after, Lady Camilla couldn't bear the loneliness and joined in. Their small circle had become a group of people with common interests. Now the four of them put down their various matters and came to the duel arena again. Other than wanting to see their treasures at the opening ceremony of the Golden Cup, they also wanted to see the reaction of the first version of the Duel of the Whole People. When it was 2 p.m., Princess Elisha finally arrived and sat on the other side of Claire. "I'm not late, right?" she whispered. Claire said, "It just started." Elisha let out a sigh of relief. Because she was busy with work, she missed the opening ceremony of the Silver Cup last month. This time, she was free and wanted to take a look. Another reason was that she noticed that her brother was going to the duel arena more and more frequently. Although she didn't know why her brother would take time out of his busy schedule to watch the duel, since her brother did this, she had to follow. Maybe she could find out something. First Prince Charles had also come to the scene today. Beside him, there was the chief archbishop who hadn't been seen for a long time. The appearance of Archbishop Caleb Norris seemed to indicate that the Holy Church's affairs were going smoothly so far. The Holy Judgment operation was very effective. Ladies and gentlemen, hello, I'm Judy. It's my honor to be the host of the Golden Cup. Following Senior Judy's formal self-introduction, the opening ceremony of the Golden Cup finally officially began. The audience listened to her voice, and the atmosphere gradually became more and more lively. As the representative of the Duel of the Whole People, Eve also went on stage and introduced the development and update of the Duel of the Whole People to the audience. She also publicly showed some of the new card packs and limited edition cards with a Halloween theme. With the cooperation of the Academy, the demonstration was very good. After her promotion, Senior Judy went on stage again and announced loudly, "The opening ceremony of the opening ceremony is over. This is the end of the opening ceremony. Next is the first day of the Gold Cup that we have been waiting for." During the short break before the start of the first day of the competition, each library will randomly select 10 lucky audience members. The selected audience members can go to the counter with their tickets to receive a Halloween-themed limited edition card. Don't worry even if you don't win. As long as you buy a Halloween egg, you will have a chance to get a limited edition card. Also, there will be a limited edition Halloween-themed duel disc, a celebrity player's exclusive voice, a unique theme venue. If you buy it, you earn it. If you buy it, you earn it. A 57 of 139. I'm so sleepy. My mind is blank. I've been lying there for hours. It's another huge chapter. I'm begging for more monthly votes. Chapter 642. When the audience in the various branches were attracted by the lucky draw, some of the students who signed up for the Golden Cup received the competition schedule sent by the Duel Club one after another. According to tradition, in order to ensure that the opening ceremony was exciting enough, the Duel Club would intentionally adjust the schedule and move some of the star contestants' matches to today. Moreover, all the matches would be held in the center of the stadium, so that the audience could watch. Under these circumstances, as the brightest star among the new contestants, Dake's chances of winning the lot were actually very high. He had already made preparations to participate in the competition. Sure enough, when the sound of the branch card began to ring out around him, his card pack also began to vibrate. As expected of Dake, Doran's eyes were filled with envy, but his Academy card didn't vibrate. To be able to receive the announcement of the schedule at this time could be said to be a proof of his popularity and strength. I didn't receive it either. Deanna looked at her Academy card and was a little depressed. Rose grabbed her hand and shook it. The Year 2 contestants probably didn't receive any notifications about today's schedule, right? But if you think about it carefully, most of our opponents today are the elites of the upper grade. So it's really hard for us to have any exciting matches with them. Diana pouted and said, "I'm not afraid of losing. Remember the website, MVIP, can't you?" 6 Luosi laughed. "Calm down, let's lose tomorrow, okay?" Deanna glared at him and rushed over with a howl. "Haha, don't mess around." Luosi quickly blocked Deanna's tickling dragon claws. The two played around for a while and saw that Dake was already preparing to get up. Deanna stopped and asked curiously, "Dake, is it the first round again?" "Yes, but it is indeed the first round." Dake looked at his Academy card and was a little surprised. The Golden Cup was supposed to be a competition centered around the upper grades. Because the 6th grade students were busy with graduation practice and other related courses, the Golden Cup was dominated by the 5th grade contestants. And among the 5th grade contestants, there were famous contestants like the Silver Dragon Girl. Therefore, it seemed to be the most reasonable choice for her to start the match. However, the Duel Club did not choose the Panduola senior as the first duelist. What's more, Dark's opponent wasn't a senior from the 4th or 5th grade. Instead, it was a 3rd grade student. "It's really the first round. Who is your opponent?" Deanna asked immediately. Dake showed his school card and said, "Elsie Kevin, a 3rd-year senior from the Noble Academy." "Senior Kevin?" Diana rolled her eyes and tried to recall. Isn't he the opponent you encountered in your debut match in the newcomers tournament? Dake said with some nostalgia. Indeed, at that time, it was my first official duel, and my opponent was LCK. That was great. During that rookie competition, LCK displayed the top strength of the second-grade students, and the mechanical dragon, that was hatched from the eggshell armament, also left a deep impression on Dake. If he didn't successfully summon the Basti Beast, with the fusion, the final winner might have been LCK. As his opponent in the rookie competition, LCK undoubtedly gave him a lot of fun. After that, Dake rarely had such a satisfying duel. He didn't expect that his first opponent in the Golden Cup would be LCK. Is this a deliberate arrangement? Dake couldn't help but think. The current head of the duel club was Senior Enea Knight, but she didn't look like the kind of girl who was more emotional than rational. Maybe you can't judge a book by its cover? Dake was a little excited. LCK was also a student of the alchemy class. Although they weren't familiar with each other yet, they had interacted with each other before. Dake wondered how strong he would be in the next duel in 9 months. Oh no, I'm looking forward to it. Dake clapped his hands and put the school card in his palm. I'll go first. Deanna and the others cheered for him. Dake left his seat and quickly walked to the entrance of the contestant tunnel. At this time, the entire schedule of today's matches was projected on the stage. From 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., and from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., it was divided into afternoon matches and evening matches. According to the speed of each match, the time of the match would be pushed forward or pushed back accordingly. Therefore, everyone's schedule only had the number of matches and the reference time. Dake had more than one match today. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling that Senior Enea Knight really thought of him as a fat sheep. From the 3 matches at the opening ceremony of the Silver Cup, to the 2 matches at the opening ceremony of the Gold Cup, there was almost no one who received the same treatment as him. Forget about the Silver Cup. Can the Gold Cup not target a second-year student? Dake really wanted to find time to question that senior. However, unlike him, those who came to watch the duels for him naturally felt that the more matches he had, the better. What's going on? There are only 2 matches today. Some people were even very dissatisfied. Yvette pinched the fat cat in her arms and looked unhappy. She thought that the opening ceremony of the Gold Cup would be like the Silver Cup's opening ceremony, where she could watch Dake's 3 matches consecutively. Then, her trip was not in vain. Beside her, Madame Camilla and Viscountess Flotty were even more disappointed. There's no schedule for Deanna and Luosi? But after a while Madame Camilla said, forget it, it's the same watching Dake's duel. Viscountess Flotty also agreed. Think about it carefully. If her opponent is a senior, Luosi will probably lose. I don't want to see her lose. Camilla smiled. Don't be too strict. Viscountess Flotty shook her head and said, it's still necessary. If she wants to get what she wants, she has to be strict with herself. On the other side, First Princess Elisha observed the words and actions of these 2 noble ladies and frowned slightly. She hadn't had any deep contact with these 2 noble ladies and had never seen them as competitors. But some time ago, the second princess consort suddenly mentioned the marriage of the 2 little princesses to her. From the standpoint of a good sister, she talked to the second princess consort about the concept of freedom of marriage. Then, she was convinced by the second princess consort, because she suddenly realized that there was no one more suitable than Dake in the entire kingdom. Although the 2 little princesses were always against Dake, she could clearly see that they had feelings for Dake. Even if she considered Zizi's standpoint, this was very suitable. But the 2 noble ladies in front of her clearly had the same idea. Elisa wouldn't be worried if they both fancied the young masters of other families. After all, if they had to choose between a noble lady and a princess, a normal person would choose the princess. But Dake Dimming was different. He had the capital to not choose the princess. Also, Dake seemed to be closer to the 2 noble ladies' daughters, nieces. In other words, in this competition, Elisha and the second princess consort were currently at a disadvantage. Don't think too much. Claire saw her frown and said, it wasn't easy to find time, so let's put other things aside for now. It's Dake's turn later. Do you know who his opponent is? Elisha looked at the projection on the stage and nodded. Elsie Kevin, the son of the head of the Kevin family. Although the Kevin family has been keeping a low profile in recent years, it is still one of the few ancient families that has survived until now. You can't underestimate it. Claire said. In that case, Dark might not be able to take him down so easily. Elisha smiled and said, I think so. Every year, the first day of the Golden Cup will try to choose the most popular contestants. If the duel is one-sided, the person who arranged the matches will be negligent. Claire said, speaking of which, you are also a graduate of the Shungmalian Academy. Elisha nodded and said, yes, actually, I have to call you senior. Claire's smile grew wider. Elsie Kevin put away his school card and got up from his seat. He was now 14 years old, which was considered an adult during the war. In the Kevin family, 14 years old was still considered an adult. Therefore, on the day he turned 14, he accepted the coming-of-age ceremony from the family. After the coming-of-age ceremony, Elsie Kevin was recognized by the elders of the family and officially became the heir of the family. He also had access to the family's treasury. Then he dug out some broken mechanical parts from the treasury that had existed for who knew how many years, as well as a damaged mechanical core. The so-called mechanical core, as the name suggested, was the core of the ancient mechanical species. It integrated energy and artificial intelligence circuits, and it was the life source of the ancient mechanical species. Since then, the ancient mechanical species had become a forgotten product of technology. As the heart of the ancient mechanical species, there was only one mechanical core left on the surface, and it was kept in a museum. Elsie Kevin didn't expect to find a mechanical core from the trash of the family treasury. Although the mechanical core was severely damaged, it still had a high value. By studying the mechanical core, he gained a lot of knowledge related to it and used it to improve his magic engineering technology. Now he had a lot more confidence. Elsie Kevin walked toward the contestant passage with the blessings of his family and friends. The two contestants entered the contestant passage one after the other. Several people who paid special attention to the contestants stared at the contestants' names on the stage with different thoughts. Angus Jeffrey, who was now a fifth-year student, was sitting in the corner of the nobles area, looking at the stage with a gloomy face. He had also signed up for this year's Golden Cup. After he was kicked out of his position as the head of the Nobles History Research Society, he had been participating in duels like crazy to train himself. However, this time, he didn't sign up for the Golden Cup to train himself. It was for revenge. Only by defeating Dake Dimung on the duel stage could he wash away his shame and raise his head again. He wouldn't gradually become a peripheral figure like now. Everyone kicks a man who is down, and everyone beats a broken drum. Angus Jeffrey had gone through the darkest period of his life during this period of time. And all of this was caused by Dake Dimung. If he wanted to turn the tables, he had to step on Dake Dimung. The Golden Cup, which was open for second-year to sixth-year students, was the stage he needed the most. Dake Dimung versus Elsie Kevin. Angus Jeffrey thought about how his miscalculation had started from Elsie Kevin's defeat. The corners of Angus Jeffrey's mouth curled into a cold smile. Only by going through the baptism of failure could he realize his own shortcomings. He was undoubtedly more mature than before. The 15-minute break quickly passed. As the vice principal, Professor Shi Erfus stepped onto the stage and gave a speech on the first day of the Golden Cup. Her speech was as formulaic as usual. There was nothing wrong with it, and there weren't many highlights. At the end of her speech, she pressed her hand down and announced in a clear voice, "This year's Golden Cup begins now." Then, in the thunderous applause, she slowly stepped off the stage and was replaced by Judy, who had been waiting for a long time. The host, Judy, picked up the microphone and said with a bright smile, "The two contestants who are about to appear on the stage of this year's Golden Cup must be well known to everyone. However, considering the possibility of new audience members, I will now give a brief introduction. We all know that the Golden Cup has always been the home ground of the upperclassmen. Second-year and third-year students can't make waves in the Golden Cup. However, The two contestants who are about to appear on the stage today have extraordinary strength that defies common sense. Second year, Aristocrat House, Dake Dimung. Third year, Aristocrat House, Elsie Kevin. Not only are they both top students in the Aristocrat House, but they are also the winners of the Crimson Star last year and the year before that. Dake Dimung is also the winner of the Orange Star this year. He has won this award for 2 years in a row. I even suspect that he will be able to win this award every year in the future. Elsie Kevin went through a short period of inactivity, but after clearing away the fog, he has been reborn. He is a strong contender for the first seat of the third year. Coincidentally, Dake Dimung's opponent in the newcomers' debut battle was Elsie Kevin. I believe that many of the old audience members still remember that duel. Although in that duel, Dake Dimung succeeded in defeating his opponent, Elsie Kevin's performance was also extremely outstanding. Now that Elsie Kevin has made a comeback, will he be able to defend the dignity of the third year and wash away his past failures? Let's wait and see. Judy's voice suddenly became excited. The audience in the stadium applauded at the same time. The tsunami-like applause opened the curtains for this highly anticipated duel. The contestants from both sides also walked out of the contestants' passage under the guidance of the staff and came to the duel in the middle. On the summoning area on both sides of the field, the red and blue magic balls had already opened their enchantments and were floating in the air. Everything was ready. After the contestants from both sides nodded to each other, they turned around and walked to the contestants' platform. Dake walked up to the red contestants' platform and found Claire and Yvette in their usual seats in the audience. When he saw First Princess Elisha also coming over, he was slightly surprised. It's a pity that Anna and Enchi can't participate in the Golden Cup yet. Dake thought so and then saw First Prince Charles. The first prince goes in and out of the dual branch more often than Yvette. Dake was actually a little speechless. What kind of time management master is this Charles? Can going to the dual branch every day help him win the throne? Oh, isn't the person next to Charles the chief archbishop? The archbishop came to the dual branch on Halloween. Is he here on a pilgrimage? The corners of Dake's mouth gradually curled up. Then he raised his hand and waved in Yvette's direction. When he found a response, he turned back to the card table and injected magic to activate it. The Golden Cup used a high-level duel mode. The minimum number of cards in a deck was 40 cards. The magic balls on both sides had a life barrier of 8,000 points. Since this was the rule used in the Easter Duel Festival, Dake was familiar with it. He put the cards that he had prepared into the card slot in the card table and activated the shuffle. As the card table was activated, the words, "Preparation Stage," appeared on the projection. In order to liven up the atmosphere, Dake wanted to talk for a while. Then he looked up at the opposite side. Elsie Kevin's appearance was above average. His bangs were meticulously combed with hair oil, and he exuded a serious aura. It showed that he took this duel very seriously. He was a very well-behaved student who usually did whatever the professor told him to do. On the surface, he didn't seem to have any bad habits. The reason why he was able to grow so quickly was because he had enough talent and diligence that didn't lose out to others. "Senior Kevin, we meet again," Dake greeted him. The corner of Elsie Kevin's mouth twitched, and he said with a smile, "I didn't expect to stand on opposite sides of the stage with you in the first round of the Golden Cup." "Indeed," Dake nodded and said. "So Senior, are you ready?" Elsie Kevin said. "I should be the one asking you that. Are you ready?" Dake smiled and said, "I'm okay. You're my senior after all." "Haha," Elsie Kevin said. "Sometimes I think that you're actually very talented at social interaction. Unfortunately, you don't use it well." Dake denied. "Actually, I'm socially phobic." Elsie Kevin asked curiously, "Social phobia? What's that?" Dake smiled and said, "Social phobia." Elsie Kevin immediately shook his head and said, "You're kidding. Let's get ready. I need some time to focus." Dake said, "Focus." Then he calmed down and waited for the duel to begin. Elsie Kevin was completely focused. Judy's words of rebirth were an exaggeration, but he had made a lot of progress compared to when he was in the newbie competition. He had a certain degree of confidence. However, Dake Dimung's progress was obvious to all. If he wanted to have a chance to win, he had to be completely focused. He couldn't make a single mistake. Beep! When the two sides stopped talking, the referee blew the whistle. After the preparation stage, a 30's countdown appeared. The commentator who was introducing the two contestants also stopped talking. Today's commentator wasn't Zach Wilson, but Jessica Gardner, a senior student of the Magic Engineering School who had a higher level of skill. Jessica had a perfect voice and a beautiful face. She was much more popular than Zach Wilson. She deliberately stopped and waited for the 30 seconds to pass, which was also very popular. At this time, the contestants needed to be completely focused and couldn't be disturbed. The audience inside and outside the arena were all staring at the projection. They seemed to be more nervous than the contestants themselves. Dake Deming and Elsie Kevin both calmly took out 5 magic cards from the top of the deck. The two of them unfolded the magic cards at a very fast speed, and then came up with a strategy. Elsie Kevin's face didn't change at all. Dake was slightly calmer. He looked at the 5 cards in his hand, and couldn't help but fall into a short contemplation. Curse Cage, Subga Beast, Underworld Soul Ring, Pride 3, Snorlax Beast, Warhorn. As if responding to the Subga Beast's expectation, Dake drew it in the first round. And with it, there was also a Pride 3. The Subga Beast was the same as the Little Demon Beast. It was a digital beast with extremely high evolution potential. Using any kind of great sin could make it evolve. Adding a Curse Cage, Subga Beast, to the deck could greatly increase the variability and error tolerance of the deck, making it harder for the opponent to restrain it. However, in the current situation, if he were to start with the Curse Cage, Subga Beast, he would have to take the risk. Dake was very clear that his tactical system had been studied very clearly by others. It was hard to guarantee that Elsie Kevin would not start with a fast attack type of magic elf or magic spell. Although the Subga Beast was a 2-star magic elf, the total magic power and defense were only 900 points. Any 3-star magic elf, as long as it had the ability to dash forward at high speed and avoided the Subga Beast's frontal attack, could kill it instantly. Once this happened, Dake would face the danger of his tactical system collapsing instantly. Therefore, instead of starting with the Curse Cage, Subga Beast, it was better to start with the Snorlax Beast. With the high defense and magic of the Snorlax Beast, even if it lay still, it could act as a meat wall. Then it would be much safer to summon the Curse Cage, Subga Beast. Therefore, in the name of Dake Deming, it's decided to be you Subga Beast. The moment the 30-second countdown ended, Dake immediately started to summon the Curse Cage, Subga Beast. As the summoning light illuminated the red summoning area, a small yellow dinosaur gradually appeared in front of the red magic elf ball. The Subga Beast finally stood on the stage of its dreams. It's the Curse Cage? The commentator, Jessica Gardner, looked at the small dinosaur and couldn't help but wonder. As a professional commentator with a certain level of strength, Jessica did her homework very well. She knew all the magic elves that had appeared in front of the first 2 contestants, and could call out their names immediately, and even make a simple introduction. In this case, even she was seeing a magic elf for the first time. There was a high probability that it was a newly refined magic elf. If it's the Curse Cage, it should be a tamed demon. I already knew that Dake Deming had a tamed demon added to the deck, but I didn't expect a second tamed demon to be added. Jessica's exclamation resounded throughout the stadium, causing the audience to reveal an expression of "so it's a tamed demon." Basically, they couldn't distinguish between a tamed demon and a magic elf. And in the blue summoning area, Elsie Kevin summoned his magic elf almost at the same time. 9 months ago, his usual summoning technique was already close to the 3-second limit, and now he finally reached the limit. At least in terms of summoning technique, he wasn't at a disadvantage. And the magic elf he summoned was still the mechanical type that he was used to. But compared to the 1-star and 2-star mechanical types that he summoned in the newcomers competition, the mechanical type that he summoned now was obviously much stronger. And Dake couldn't identify the type of mechanical magic elf this time. And being unable to identify it meant that he couldn't respond correctly in the first place, which was quite fatal. Card name: Ancient Mechanical Component Light. Type: Elf card. Level: Race, mechanical type. Attribute, steel/light. Magic power, 1000. Attack, 1500. Defense, 1000. Ultimate skill. Hypernuclear assembly light source cannon. Fortunately, the appearance of this ancient mechanical component, light, perfectly exposed its characteristics. It was a hemispherical mechanical component with a pillar, and on top of the hemispherical head was a circular retractable cannon barrel. Therefore, the moment he saw the magic elf, Dake immediately ordered, "Dodge." Almost at the same time, the muzzle of ancient mechanical component, light, lit up with a dazzling white light. The subbeast's innate fighting instinct made it feel fatal danger, and almost without hesitation, it followed Dake's order and pounced to the right of its body. Before it landed, a beam of light that penetrated through the 100-meter arena instantly passed through the place where it was originally standing and hit the red magic ball. Magic power, red 8000 6500. Beep, beep, beep. The eye of ancient mechanical component, light, flashed frequently with red light, and the muzzle gradually emitted white smoke. Before the start of the competition, Elsie Kevin probably ordered it to fire the light source cannon at the opponent's magic ball or magic elf once it was summoned. If its appearance was a little more strange, so strange that it couldn't be seen as a cannon, maybe the sub-beast would really be killed by this attack. But there was no if. The 3-second cooldown was over. Dake's eyes turned cold, and he didn't hesitate to summon Pride 3. In the name of Dake Dimming, evolve sub-beast. The sub-beast that had just crawled up from the ground was still instinctively panicking. But as the light of Pride 3 shone on its forehead, its eyes gradually turned cold, and the uncertainty of the situation completely disappeared. Pride swallowed its panic. Its will to fight burned like fire. "Come out, earthen Tyrannosaurus." Oh! The sub-beast suddenly raised its head and completed its evolution with a roar. From a small dinosaur, it evolved into a ferocious dragon that looked like a Tyrannosaurus rex. The earthen Tyrannosaurus's skin was covered with iconic blue stripes, and its head was covered with a hard shell with huge horns that looked like long swords. There were also sharp horns on both sides of its head and shoulders. Its strong body was like a lethal weapon, and it emitted an extremely ferocious aura. Dake suddenly raised its head and looked at Elsie Kevin with bright eyes, waiting for his response. But Elsie Kevin, who had failed to kill first sight, was only half a second slower to summon the second magic guide elf. It was still the mechanical component that he was used to, but this time it was the ancient version. The ancient mechanical component that he summoned this time was a lower body component with tracks. Card name, ancient mechanical component, earth, type, elf card, level, ****, race, mechanical type, attribute, steel/ground, magic power, 1000, attack, 1000, defense, 1500, ultimate skill, hyper-assembly 100,000 horsepower. When the earthen Tyrannosaurus completed its evolution, Elsie Kevin also issued a command with a serious expression. Ancient mechanical component, hyper-assembly. His original mechanical components series had the ability of perfect assembly. Without fusion, he could assemble multiple mechanical components through assembly, allowing him to perfectly stack their 3 sizes and obtain a new sure-kill skill. But the mechanical component series also had very obvious flaws. They were only assembled and not fused. Therefore, the upgraded star level was only a kind of fake star. It didn't increase the level of the mechanical component. Moreover, the star level and 3 sizes of the mechanical component were very low. Low basic attributes were the shortcomings of the mechanical component series. Even if they used the ultimate skill of perfect assembly to stack their 3 sizes, they still wouldn't be able to reach the strength of the star level. But the ancient mechanical component perfectly made up for this flaw, although the problem of the level could only be solved by adding the mechanical core. But this had already raised the strength of Elsie Kevin's card set to an extremely strong level. He had indeed walked his own path on this path. Under his command, the ancient mechanical component, light bracket, was inserted into the body of the ancient mechanical component, earth, and successfully assembled into a self-propelled turret with tracks and wheels. Card name, ancient mechanical component, unlimited, type, Elf card. Level. ****. Race. Mechanical type. Attribute. Steel. Magic power. 2000. Attack. 2500. Defense. 2500. Ultimate skill. Hypernuclear assembly. Unlimited cannon. The appearance of the earthen Tyrannosaurus and ancient mechanical component, unlimited, made the audience, who were looking forward to this scene, instantly enter a climax. The cheers from the audience were louder and louder. After the two players looked at each other, they immediately issued the order to attack. Earthen Tyrannosaurus. Giant horn impact. Ancient mechanical component. Unlimited cannon. The two 6-star magic guide fairies activated their sure kill skills at the same time. The earthen Tyrannosaurus suddenly lowered its huge head and aimed the huge horn on its nose straight ahead. Then it stomped its feet and rushed out. Under the effect of the ultimate skill, its speed increased extremely quickly. It could cross a distance of 100 meters in the blink of an eye. However, the ancient mechanical component, unlimited, suddenly extended its cannon barrel. The closer the cannon barrel was to the front, the thicker it became. The energy absorbed from the ground was transferred to the cannon barrel and compressed to the limit in the cannon barrel. Then it aimed at the earthen Tyrannosaurus and suddenly shot. Boom! The beam that was thicker and longer than before instantly hit the earthen Tyrannosaurus' horn on its head. Then, it was instantly dispersed by the energy contained in the horn. The earthen Tyrannosaurus' momentum did not stop. It continued to charge as if it was not injured at all. The shell on its head and the horn on its head were the hardest parts of its body. It could perfectly display the limit of 2500 defense. It could perfectly block the ancient mechanical component, unlimited cannon, perfectly. However, Elsie Kevin immediately caught the key point and quickly said, "Attack its legs." Beep beep beep. Ancient mechanical component, unlimited, once again gathered energy and fired. The thick beam of light instantly hit the earthen Tyrannosaurus' legs, causing its charge to be thwarted. Roar. The continuous harassment finally made the earthen Tyrannosaurus angry. Ancient mechanical component, unlimited cannon, and destructive white jet spray were the same type of ultimate skills. It only needed 3 seconds to charge up before it could be fired. However, in the time it took to fire 2 shots, the earthen Tyrannosaurus had already charged across half of the field. Its huge horn violently crashed into the ancient mechanical component, unlimited barrel. "Get out of the way!" Elsie Kevin yelled in a slightly hurried voice. However, the ancient mechanical component, unlimited, that relied on its tracks to move was not flexible enough to change its direction. Elsie Kevin wanted to summon a new magic card to counter the attack, but it was already too late. The huge ram smashed the muzzle of the cannon, and the energy that was rapidly accumulating in the cannon instantly exploded. The entire cannon was thus completely destroyed. Without the barrel, the ancient mechanical component, unlimited, was like a cat without its claws. It could only wait to be slaughtered. Super Flame. Dake's next order came and made the situation worse for the blue team. The earthen Tyrannosaurus raised its head and spat out the super hot flame that was accumulating in its mouth. The ancient mechanical component, unlimited, was completely devoured. Fire countered steel. The pure steel, ancient mechanical component, unlimited, was blasted into pieces by the fire attribute ultimate skill supported by 3000 points of attack. It was actually separated from the hypernuclear assembly state. Elsie Kevin, the third-year student, is actually at a disadvantage. Jessica Gardner screamed as if she was possessed by an actor. Elsie Kevin's eyes twitched. He really wanted to glare at her at this critical moment. However, he controlled himself and immediately summoned the ancient mechanical component. However, Dake gave the next order very clearly. Earthen Tyrannosaurus, start charging. The earthen Tyrannosaurus raised its head and spat out a mouthful of flame. The flame was boiling and its power was increasing. Level 1. 3 seconds later, the earthen Tyrannosaurus spat out a higher density of flame towards the summoning area. Ultimate skill, Super Explosion. The first level of charging caused the base power to skyrocket by 50%. 2 of the ancient mechanical component, components were instantly vaporized. Elsie Kevin's expression changed abruptly. However, Dake knew very well that even if his mechanical component was blasted back to its original form, as long as it existed, it could be used as a sacrifice to be summoned. Although the ancient mechanical component was much stronger than the mechanical component, its basic properties were not that different. Attack the magic conducting ball. Dake gave the order one after another. The earthen Tyrannosaurus immediately raised its claws and slapped at the blue magic conducting ball. Go. Elsie Kevin hurriedly shot out magic power and pulled the blue magic conducting ball into the air. The earthen Tyrannosaurus' attack missed, and it immediately stared at Elsie Kevin, who was on the stage. Elsie Kevin suddenly felt that he was being stared at by a ferocious beast, and a chill ran down his spine. Tick. Battle stage 2. 30s. Both players drew their cards at the same time. In the first round, the earthen Tyrannosaurus crushed the ancient mechanical component, Unlimited, in a crushing manner. However, its lack of aerial ability prevented it from chasing after the opponent. This created a critical opportunity for Elsie Kevin. Betting on his last hope, he clenched his teeth and drew 2 magic conducting cards from the top of the deck. However, his eyes instantly blossomed with spirit. At the same time, Dake Dimming also had a slight smile on his face. It seems like both players have drawn crucial magic conducting cards in the second round, Jessica Gardner said quickly. However, I really can't figure out how Elsie Kevin will turn the tables in this hopeless situation. Let's see. The commentator's words did not affect Dake at all. He looked at the 2 new cards in his hand. Summon immediately. In the name of Dake Dimming, magic conducting summon, flight spell. A snow-white light shot out from the card and surrounded the earthen Tyrannosaurus on the ground. It's the flight spell. Jessica revealed a look of astonishment, but in the blink of an eye, she suddenly accepted it. If it's his magic guiding fairy, it's possible. Flight spell was a spell that required continuous control. Although a magus could use it on his own magic conducting elf, a magic conducting elf that lacked intelligence would not be able to control it. However, Dake Dimming's magic conducting elf would not have such a problem. She did not notice the panic hidden deep in the earthen Tyrannosaurus' eyes. 60 of 139. Today is also a day. I'm begging for monthly votes. I'm begging for blades. Go to sleep. Chapter 643. Due to the lack of an environment, Dark didn't actually do as Jessica had thought and train every single one of his magic guide fairies. Among them, the sub-beast, which was now the earthen Tyrannosaurus, was a fish that slipped through the net. Moreover, the uniqueness of a creature like the digitized beast was that every time it evolved, its biological characteristics would undergo an extreme change, similar to the reprogramming of its DNA. For example, even if the sub-beast wasn't afraid of heights, the earthen Tyrannosaurus might have a fear of heights. Of course, it wouldn't be that exaggerated. At most, it wouldn't be able to control the flight spell very well. However, for the earthen Tyrannosaurus that had been looking forward to a duel, this was quite a serious matter. Should I fly or not? The earthen Tyrannosaurus was wrapped in the flight spell and felt an ascending force surrounding its body. It only needed to tap its feet a little, and it would fly into the sky. But what about after it flew up? It didn't know how to control it. Remember, https://m, VIP can't you? VIP, when Dake successfully activated the flight spell. Elsie Kevin had also completed the first summoning of the second round. As the summoning light flashed, a silver-white mechanical ball appeared. The surface of the mechanical ball was engraved with geometric circuits. If one looked closely, one would find that there were 8 circular circuits evenly distributed. In order to avoid the attack of the earthen Tyrannosaurus, Elsie Kevin chose to summon it above the blue summoning area. It floated near the blue magic ball, and it was just one size larger than the magic ball's life enchantment. At first glance, Dake almost mistook it for the upgraded version of the eggshell armament. But in fact it wasn't. Card name, Ancient Mechanical Component Dark. Type, Elf card. Level, *****. Race, Mechanical. Attribute, Steel/Dark. Magic power, 1500. Attack, 1000. Defense, 1000. Ultimate skill. Hypercore assembly, shadow pair. As soon as the ancient mechanical component, Dark, was summoned, it performed the ultimate skill shadow pair, under Elsie Kevin's command. Then the 8 circular circuits on the surface of the ancient mechanical component, Dark, suddenly opened, revealing a total of 8 circular holes. The dark energy gushing out from the 8 holes quickly created a black clone that looked exactly the same as the original body. Considering that Elsie Kevin would not do anything useless at this critical moment, Dake immediately realized that this clone could also be regarded as a sacrifice. Although the effect of this surekill skill wasn't as good as Greedy Slime 2's Divide Success, it was still powerful enough as a 3-star magic guide elf that could be summoned directly. Moreover, the new surekill skills obtained after the ancient mechanical components were basically the fusion of the surekill skills of the basic components. In other words, if he used ancient mechanical component, Dark, as one of the components, the ultimate skill he obtained would most likely inherit part of the effect of shadow pair. In that case, perhaps he could obtain 2 6-star magic conducting fairies at once? However, with this ancient mechanical component, why didn't Elsie Kevin use it in the first round? Dake very clearly noticed that this ancient mechanical component, Dark, was not a new magic card that he obtained in the second round. It was one of the 5 cards that he had in his hand at the beginning. Elsie Kevin had drawn the ancient machine component, Dark, at the start of the game, but she did not summon it. Could it be that this ancient mechanical component can't be assembled without limit like mechanical component? Dake couldn't help but ponder. He clearly remembered that Elsie Kevin had used 4 mechanical component cards to assemble a 7-star mechanical commander, even though that mechanical commander only had a 4-star BWF. If ancient mechanical component and mechanical component could be assembled without limit, Elsie Kevin only needed to summon these 3 ancient mechanical components in the first round to assemble a 9-star magic conducting fairy. In that case, no matter how powerful the Earthen Tyrannosaurus was, it would still be suppressed. It was obvious that there must be a limit. Is there a limit in terms of attributes? For example, it can't be assembled with attributes that counter each other? Or is there a limit in terms of the number of basic components? Or can it only assemble 2 basic components? While Dake was pondering, he saw Elsie Kevin begin the next round of summoning. Then he suddenly noticed that the Earthen Tyrannosaurus was still looking at the sky. Earthen Tyrannosaurus? Dake reminded it. Dake's call turned into courage and was injected into the Earthen Tyrannosaurus spirit. It suddenly focused and made up its mind. Fly. The next moment, the Earthen Tyrannosaurus body was like a stone that was thrown out, smashing into the blue magic conducting ball above its head. Then, he abruptly brushed past the side of the blue magic ball. The ancient mechanical component, Dark, and its replica that were floating near the blue magic conducting ball did not even move. The commentator, Jessica Gardner, said quietly, "I take back what I said earlier." Phew. The sudden flight of the Earthen Tyrannosaurus startled Elsie Kevin. However, when he saw the Earthen Tyrannosaurus accurately fly between the blue magic conducting ball and the ancient mechanical component Dark, he heaved a sigh of relief and summoned again. In the name of Elsie Kevin, I offer the ancient mechanical component Dark and its replica as a sacrifice to summon the mechanical dragon. When the chanting voice was heard through the loudspeaker, Dake was immediately alerted. The 2 magic conducting cards he drew in the second round were the Flying Spell and the Greed 3. The Flying Spell could be used. However, the Greed 3 could not cause any substantial changes to the current situation. Even if he used the Greed 3 to evolve the Snorlax into the Snorlax, it could not cause any damage to the flying creatures. Therefore, he was going to keep the Greed 3 for later use. However, the successful summoning of the mechanical dragon made the situation complicated again. Dake had a deep memory of this magic conducting elf. During the newbie competition, Elsie Kevin used the eggshell armament to complete the ritual and finally summoned the mechanical dragon. Then, the mechanical dragon, which was considered one of the strongest among the 6 stars, was killed by the Basti beast on the spot. However, The effects of summoning the mechanical dragon in the 9th round and the 2nd round were completely different. Now the Earthen Tyrannosaurus S3 ultimate skills were all on cooldown. However, the mechanical dragon was in full victory mode. The sky was the mechanical dragon S home ground, so the Earthen Tyrannosaurus could not win in the air. Earthen Tyrannosaurus, land on the ground. Therefore, Dake immediately ordered the Earthen Tyrannosaurus to land while the mechanical dragon was coming out of the sacrificial summoning circle. This order was undoubtedly a pleasant sound to the Earthen Tyrannosaurus' ears. It quickly controlled the magic break and dived down. Elsie Kevin pointed at the Earthen Tyrannosaurus and moved the blue magic ball away from the Earthen Tyrannosaurus' diving path. The Earthen Tyrannosaurus returned to the ground, and its aura instantly increased. Dake immediately summoned the Snorlax. At this time, the mechanical dragon finally descended amidst the cheers of the audience. Card name Mechanical Dragon. Type Elf card. Level 4all. Race Machine. Attribute Steel/Dragon. Magic power 2500. Attack 3000. Defense 2500. Ultimate skills Steel Charge. Metal Storm. The mechanical dragon's body was silver white, and its dragon horn stuck close to its scalp and extended backward, making the dragon's head look like a triangle. Its body was smooth and textured, its neck was long, its silver wings were as sharp as blades, and its 2 claws were shining with dazzling light. Its lower limbs were thick and strong, and its tail was extremely long, with 2 antennae at the tip of its tail. The silver-white metal scales were sharp and angular, shining silver under the autumn sun. It was very charming. After summoning the mechanical dragon, Elsie Kevin's eyes were filled with confidence. He held the other magic card that he drew in the 2nd round in his hand, waiting for the cooldown of the sacrificial summoning spell to end before he could summon it. During this time, his voice suddenly became louder, and he issued an order to the mechanical dragon. Mechanical dragon, activate the ultimate skill, Steel Charge. At this time, the Earthen Tyrannosaurus had already stepped on the ground, and the Snorlax in the red summoning area was being summoned. Dake looked at the mechanical dragon that was diving down from the sky and instantly turned into a silver arrow, and he said in a deep voice, "Earthen Tyrannosaurus, block it." Beep! The wings of the mechanical dragon tore through the air, and an ear-piercing screech resounded throughout the stadium. Its speed was extremely shocking. The Earthen Tyrannosaurus could not dodge at all, and it could only block it head-on. However, it was not the Earthen Tyrannosaurus' style to only defend and not attack. Its lower limbs moved backward, and its waist sank. Then, it channeled its energy upward, and with a loud roar, it rushed upward. Its huge ram crashed into the mechanical dragon that was charging at it. Boom! The Earthen Tyrannosaurus' huge ram was actually broken. With the support of the ultimate skill, the mechanical dragon, strength gained the upper hand. After it broke the ram, its momentum did not stop and it crashed into the Earthen Tyrannosaurus' head. Crack! Cracks actually appeared on the carapace. Roar! However, an angry roar seemed to burst out from the mechanical dragon's throat. The Earthen Tyrannosaurus did not even take half a step back. Although its head was pressed down, its spine did not bend. It suddenly raised its 2 muscular arms, and its sharp dragon claws grabbed the mechanical dragon's head fiercely. It grabbed the mechanical dragon's head forcefully, and then it gathered all its strength and roared again. Roar! The mechanical dragon's huge body was smashed to the ground by the Earthen Tyrannosaurus. Boom! The ground trembled, and the mechanical dragon's sharp roar sounded. The entire audience was in an uproar because of this. The commentator, Jessica, quickly screamed, "Oh my God, the mechanical dragon that should have had the absolute advantage was smashed to the ground. What went wrong? The 3rd-year Elsie Kevin has fallen into a disadvantage again." Disadvantage my *SS. Elsie Kevin's forehead twitched. He stared at the mechanical dragon that was struggling to stand up and suddenly shouted, "Metal Storm! Crush it!" He could no longer maintain his tense expression. In just the 2nd round, the mechanical dragon's defense was broken. The atmosphere of the duel rose because of this. Dake's eyes were burning. He immediately pressed down Greed 3 in his hand and shouted, "Earthen Tyrannosaurus. Grab its neck. Step on its wings. Don't let it fly." Roar. The Earthen Tyrannosaurus immediately stepped forward, bent down, and grabbed the mechanical dragon's slender neck. Then its huge body suddenly turned over, stepped on the mechanical dragon's wings and pressed it down hard. Screech. The mechanical dragon let out a sharp screech and shot out a powerful airflow under its wings. However, the Earthen Tyrannosaurus exerted force and stepped on that wing again. It was impossible for it to turn over with just one wing. Naturally, the sure kill skill, Metal Storm, could not be used. The Earthen Tyrannosaurus' horn was broken and its shell was shattered. However, its momentum was still crushing the mechanical dragon. The basic attributes of both sides were not that different. This should not be the case. However, the situation had already reached this stage. After the Earthen Tyrannosaurus successfully suppressed the mechanical dragon, its momentum soared. Its huge mouth that was full of sharp teeth opened up and bit the mechanical dragon's neck. In the name of Elsie Kevin, I summon Superalloy Mechanical Armor. Elsie Kevin suddenly raised the magic card in his hand. A silver stream of light burst out from the card and flowed to the surface of the mechanical dragon's body. The mechanical dragon's teeth were forcefully repelled. Bang! Elsie Kevin slammed the table and shouted, "Mechanical dragon, stand up." Roar. The mechanical dragon finally roared. The silver light that covered the surface of its body burst out and condensed into a mechanical armor that was thicker than dragon scales. Its body became heavier because of this, but it also gained more strength and defense. The Earthen Tyrannosaurus was gradually unable to suppress it. Its arms that were connected to its wings suddenly propped up. Air was spurting out from under its wings again as it struggled to stand up. Kamang. Woo woo woo. However, from the direction of the red team summoning area, a long horn sound suddenly came. Snorlax held up the war horn that had just appeared and blew it hard with its cheeks puffed up. A phantom of a battle-hardened soldier appeared behind it. A huge rhinoceros raised its head and roared. That roar was as deafening as thunder. The momentum that the mechanical dragon had just raised was instantly cut off. It even felt a little scared. Meanwhile, the Earthen Tyrannosaurus was enraged by the horn sound. Its eyes became more manic. A surge of energy burst out from its body, causing its strength to skyrocket. Its attack power was increased by another 300 points. The Earthen Tyrannosaurus and the mechanical dragon's strength were equal again. However, the mechanical dragon's Metal Storm had already been cast. The powerful air spurting out from under its wings finally allowed it to turn the situation around. The super alloy mechanical armor also gave the mechanical dragon a stronger defense. Pieces of silver blade-like light appeared around its body and formed a metal storm. In the blink of an eye. However, the Earthen Tyrannosaurus' arm was cut by the storm, but it still did not retreat. It even clenched its claws into a fist and punched down. The punch went through the metal storm that had just formed and was not powerful enough and landed on the mechanical dragon's cheek. Bang! The mechanical dragon's mouth was crooked by this punch. It could no longer maintain the metal storm's performance. It raised its wing claws and grabbed the Earthen Tyrannosaurus' arm, trying to push it back. However, the Earthen Tyrannosaurus had been observing the wrestling Hawkman's training day and night. Although its bare-handed skills were not strong, it was enough to suppress these magic elves. The mechanical dragon was suppressed in the blink of an eye. The Earthen Tyrannosaurus punched the mechanical dragon's eyes again. Even with the protection of the armor, its eyeballs almost burst open. However, when the Earthen Tyrannosaurus wanted to continue, the mechanical dragon's body suddenly turned into light and disappeared, leaving only the super alloy mechanical armor on the ground. The Earthen Tyrannosaurus raised its head and found that a new sacrificial summoning circle had appeared above its head. It turned out that the second round had already ended, and both players had drawn their cards. Seeing that the mechanical dragon could no longer escape, Elsie Kevin decisively abandoned it and sacrificed a new magic elf to summon. Using a 6-star magic elf as a sacrifice to summon a 6-star magic elf. This action seemed like a losing card, but when necessary, it was a move to resolve the situation. What's more, Elsie Kevin sacrificed to summon the Ancient Mechanical Giant. This time, card name, Ancient Mechanical Giant. Type, Elf card, level for all. Race, Machine attribute, Steel, Magic power, 2600. Attack 3000, defense 3000. Ultimate skills, Million-Ton Steel Fist, Mechanical Revolution. The Ancient Mechanical Giant, with no blind spots, was currently one of Elsie Kevin's strongest single magic elf cards. Unlike the Mechanical Dragon, the Ancient Mechanical Giant could be equipped with a mechanical core, which would allow it to be reborn. However, there was no mechanical core in Elsie Kevin's hand for the time being. He added the other of the 2 new magic elf cards that he had drawn in the 3rd round into his deck, and then looked at the field. Next, he let the Ancient Mechanical Giant pick up the super alloy mechanical armor that the Mechanical Dragon had left on the field and equip it. Card name, Super Alloy Mechanical Armor. Type, Item card. Effect, Attack plus 300, Defense plus 500, limited to machine. Once the Super Alloy Mechanical Armor was equipped, the Ancient Mechanical Giant would gain an attack and defense comparable to a 7-star magic elf. If it triggered the ultimate skill, Mechanical Revolution, it would become even stronger. Moreover, the Ancient Mechanical Giant was tall and heavy. No matter what, it would not be suppressed by the earthen Tyrannosaurus with its body. Just when he was so sure, his expression suddenly changed and his pupils shrunk abruptly. Something incomprehensible was happening right in front of his eyes. On the red team's platform, while Elsie Kevin was busy summoning, Dake Dimming could not just stand there and watch. The 2 magic elf cards that he had drawn in the 3rd round were Ball Sea Lion, Dream Demon. After getting these 2 magic elf cards, he had completely given up on the idea of keeping Greed 3. Although the earthen Tyrannosaurus seemed to be getting stronger as the battle went on, it was actually losing a lot of its magic power. If he did not strengthen his own team, he would most likely be in a passive position. The evolution of Little Snorlax was imperative. In the name of Dake Dimming, I summon Greed 3. When the Ancient Mechanical Giant rose from the ground, the Little Snorlax had also completed its transformation under the illumination of Greed 3. What was extremely rare was that the Snorlax did not lie down immediately after the transformation. Instead, it was like an agile fatty. It quickly walked to the front of the earthen Tyrannosaurus and picked up the super alloy mechanical armor that the Mechanical Dragon had dropped. Pick up. During the battle, it can pick up items dropped or discarded by others and temporarily gain the right to use them. The opponent cannot retrieve them or remove them. Pick up additional effect. Little Snorlax is greedy for everything it does not have, especially food. It will often pick up items, food, that are discarded or left behind by others. To be honest, even Dake himself had almost forgotten about the ultimate skill of Snorlax and Little Snorlax. In fact, it was because ever since Little Snorlax moved to the club classroom, Dake had never seen it picking up trash again. Naturally, he had forgotten about this ultimate skill. Meanwhile, in the duel arena, Snorlax picked up the super alloy mechanical armor from the ground and equipped it on its body with a happy face. Snorlax. Attack plus 300, Defense plus 500. Card name, Snorlax. Type, Elf card. Level for all. Race, Bird/Beast. Attribute, Normal MP, 4000. Attack, 2000 plus 300. Defense, 2500 plus 500. Ultimate skill. Pick up Sleep Heavy Stomp Earthquake. Contrary to common sense, the Snorlax that had successfully equipped the super alloy mechanical armor looked like it had turned into a machine. Its entire body was covered in steel. Elsie Kevin stared at Snorlax. His heart was in turmoil. How is this possible? It would be fine if it was just the equipment being picked up. However, after seeing Snorlax equip the super alloy mechanical armor with its own eyes, Elsie Kevin's heart was completely blown away. Super alloy mechanical armor was an equipment card that he had crafted himself. He was very clear about the effects and restrictions of this equipment card. If it was not a machine type, it would be impossible for it to equip superalloy mechanical armor. No matter if it was Little Snorlax or Snorlax, it was impossible for it to be a machine type. I can't think about it anymore. Elsie Kevin suddenly cut off his train of thought. He immediately took out the superalloy mechanical armor magic card and cancelled the summoning on the spot. Under normal circumstances, the summoned items, equipment, and weapons could be retrieved using this simple and direct method even if they were taken away by force. However, he had failed. It can't be cancelled. Elsie Kevin was in a bad mood. He even thought of the worst-case scenario. Superalloy mechanical armor being taken away. He had never experienced such a situation before. It was inevitable that he was a little nervous. However, at this time, there was a limit to what he could do. Ancient mechanical giant. He stared at the two magic elves of Dake. He looked away from Snorlax and stared at the earthen Tyrannosaurus. After the battle with the machine dragon, just now the earthen Tyrannosaurus did not have much magic left. Kill one first. Attack that Tyrannosaurus. The gigantic, ancient mechanical giant immediately stepped forward and dashed towards the earthen Tyrannosaurus. It covered half of the distance of 100 meters in the blink of an eye. It raised its right arm abruptly. Silver light gathered in its palm. It clenched its 5 fingers tightly. The light went through its palm and covered its entire fist in a huge light ball. The steel energy was boiling crazily. However, Dake quickly gave an order. Earthen Tyrannosaurus, retreat and take off. Snorlax, stomp heavily. Earthquake. The two magic elves in the field immediately executed the order. Although the earthen Tyrannosaurus was a little unwilling, it still flew backward. Of course, it only flew up half a meter before it wobbled and lost control. However, this had given the Snorlax space to move. Gotcha. Unfortunately, the ancient mechanical giant did not have wings. When it was approaching, Snorlax slowly lifted its right leg, and then like a heavy hammer, it suddenly stomped down. Kaboom! The whole field let out a trembling cry. A ring-shaped shockwave spread out in all directions from where the ancient mechanical giant landed. The ancient mechanical giant could not dodge and was hit in the chest by the shockwave. The high-frequency vibration went through the shockwave and into its body, causing its whole body to tremble like a chaff. However, the dizziness effect of the sure kill, heavy stomp, did not take effect. Although the ancient mechanical giant was trembling, it still maintained its balance with its weight advantage. However, in the next moment, Snorlax's second sure kill skill was about to hit. Sure kill skill, Earthquake. Earthquake was triggered at the same moment as Heavy Stomp. A second shockwave that was even more powerful was produced half a second later. The ancient mechanical giant's body that was stabilizing with difficulty was instantly hit by the horrifying shockwave. Its whole body finally could not withstand it and fell backward like a landslide. Bang! The million-ton steel fist that was cast halfway also dissipated instantly when its right hand touched the ground. The whole field was shaking violently because of earthquake. One could feel the obvious shaking on the contestant stage. However, such a horrifying sure kill skill with such a wide range only made the audience more excited. Ancient mechanical giant. Elsie Kevin steadied her steps and shouted. The ancient mechanical giant that fell to the ground actually stood up slowly with both of its hands supporting its back. The situation was so tense that it was suffocating. The third round was over in the blink of an eye. The contestant with both hands reached into the deck at the same time and drew 2 new magic cards in a row. Dake obviously had the upper hand in the field, so he was much calmer when he drew the cards. However, Elsie Kevin's situation was urgent. What she needed was a godly draw that could turn the situation around. Mechanical core, or Elsie Kevin put the 2 new magic cards into her hand and quickly glanced at them. Her heart sank to the bottom. There was no mechanical core. Fate would not always take pity on the weak. Elsie Kevin calmed down in this situation. She drew a card from the deck and quickly summoned it. Although the situation was very bad, it was not the time to admit defeat. On the red side, Dake had also added 2 new magic cards into her hand. Lion Beast. Wishful dice. Why did she add wishful dice to the deck? Maybe it was just to preserve a little bit of her dignity as a playboy. Dake took out the Dream Demon that he got in the last round and summoned it. In the name of Dake Dimming, I summon Dream Demon. A dark green little cutie appeared from the light of summoning. Then, without looking at the field, it turned around and made a big funny face at Dake. Dake pointed and said, "Go break the blue magic ball for me." Only then did the Dream Demon turn around and fly towards the blue magic conducting ball. She tried her best in the masquerade ball last night. The dread gem on her chest was dim, but she still had the ability to chase after a magic ball. After all, the magic ball would not fight back. But just as she rushed out, the light of summoning lit up in the air opposite her. Elsie Kevin once again summoned a magic elf. Card name, Ancient Mechanical Component Fly. Type, Fairy Card Level, *****, Race, Mechanical. Attribute, Steel/Flight. Magic, 1000. Attack, 1500. Defense, 1000. Ultimate Skills. Hypercore Assembly, Steel Blade Wings, Ancient Mechanical Component. Fly looked like a mechanical eagle with a long sharp beak. There were cog-like rings floating outside of its eyes. Its wings were like blades that were pieced together, emitting a sharp light. When it appeared from the summoning light, its wings suddenly spread out. The wings were made of steel blades that were 3 meters long after they were spread out. Although the Dream Demon might not be inferior to Ancient Mechanical Component, Fly, in terms of stats, but the difference in attack power between the two was huge. Ancient Mechanical Component, Fly, instantly flew out and locked onto the Dream Demon. Elsie Kevin suddenly raised her hand and shouted, "Ancient Mechanical Giant, activate the ultimate skill. Mechanical Revolution." The Ancient Mecha Giant stood up from the ground and looked up at the only other Ancient Mecha Giant on the battlefield. In the next second, a white light was shot out from the gem between its brows. When the white light hit the Ancient Mechanical Component Fly, it quickly dimmed and disappeared. But the Ancient Mechanical Giant was glowing with white light. Its attack and defense both jumped up by 300 points. It reached a terrifying 3,300 points. After that, the Ancient Mechanical Giant raised its fist again. The white light of million-ton steel fist gathered in its palm and finally blasted out this time. But in front of it, there was only Snorlax. Snorlax, equipped with superalloy machinery, crossed its arms and steadily blocked the million-ton steel fist. Although the million-ton steel fist was powerful, Snorlax had a mana value of 4,000 points. With 3,000 points of defense, it was impossible for it to be killed by the Ancient Mechanical Giant. After taking the punch head-on, Snorlax immediately grabbed the Ancient Mechanical Giant's fist and moved its body to the side. It pulled the Ancient Mechanical Giant's right arm back and pressed it down with its weight. The Ancient Mechanical Giant actually lost its balance because of the Ancient Mechanical Giant. Its huge body fell down uncontrollably. "Gotcha!" Snorlax showed a proud smile. After the Ancient Mechanical Giant fell down completely, it aimed at the back of the Ancient Mechanical Giant's neck and delivered a million-ton elbow strike with the force of Mount Tai. "Gotcha!" If the Ancient Mechanical Giant wasn't a complete mechanical creation, that strike was enough to break its neck. At the moment, Dake's normal summoning skill had finished its cooldown. He summoned the Ball Sea Lion on the brink of crisis. Then he slowly pressed on the Underworld Soul Ring. The Ancient Mechanical Giant's killer skill, Mechanical Revolution, could draw power from the Ancient Mechanical Giant. Every Ancient Mechanical Giant that was present would gain 300 points of attack and defense. There might be a limit, but it was uncertain. Dake was only guessing the effect of Mechanical Revolution based on its performance. However, for such a killer skill, as long as the Ancient Mechanical Giant was eliminated as soon as possible, it would naturally be countered. Under the situation where Earthen Tyrannosaurus couldn't control Fly, Dream Demon wasn't a match for Ancient Mechanical Component, Fly. Then he would sacrifice it. However, when he was waiting for his normal summoning skill to finish its cooldown, Elsie Kevin summoned another magic card. Since it was a silent spell, Dake didn't know the name of the card. However, layers of magic circuits appeared on the ground at an extremely fast speed, blooming like a chrysanthemum, covering the entire blue half of the zone. Field skill? No, a secret ritual. Dake frowned. He saw that the ancient mechanical giant relied on its strength that was stronger than Snorlax, and successfully broke free from Snorlax as suppression. Then it retreated without a fight. Even though the ancient mechanical giant's defense was extremely strong, the ground element was the bane of the steel element. Snorlax's heavy stomp and earthquake had caused considerable damage to it. After that, it forcefully maintained its HP. After that, normal attacks couldn't do much damage to it. The steel elemental magic guide fairies were immune to all killing skills other than those of the ground, fire, water, and lightning attributes. Therefore, Dake couldn't take it down in a short time. Now sacrificing Lion to summon Holy Sword was actually a warm-up. As long as the attack power was up to standard, there was no steel that Holy Sword couldn't cut through. Just like how Elsie Kevin prayed for a lucky draw from God, Dake also needed a crucial magic card to give him the finishing blow. The competition of luck between duelists had always been a part of the magic duel. There was even a very famous duelist who had always relied on luck to win. This drama had won him a lot of fans. The ancient mechanical giant retreated to the blue half of the field and stood on the blooming chrysanthemum pattern. The orange lines of the pattern flowed from time to time. The earthen Tyrannosaurus and Snorlax were guarding the red half of the field. In the sky, the ancient mechanical component, Fly, was being toyed with by the Dream Demon. The strength of the ancient mechanical component, Fly, was the sharp, steel blade wings. However, it was difficult for pure physical attacks to hurt the Dream Demon of the ghost element. The Dream Demon even took the opportunity to touch the blue magic ball a few times, which scared Elsie Kevin so much that she quickly controlled the magic ball to dodge. Under such circumstances, Dake held back and didn't use the Underworld Soul Ring immediately. Tick. The sound of the round changing rang softly. The duel had entered the 5th round. Both sides drew their cards at the same time. The moment Elsie Kevin saw the card clearly, she couldn't help but laugh. She had drawn the best lot. On the other hand, Dake Dimming was also smiling faintly. In the competition of luck, both sides seemed to have tied again. Pride. Bliss 3 month. The decision to protect the earthen Tyrannosaurus worked. The strongest, fiercest, and evilest magic fairy was about to appear. Bliss 3 month. Existence gave him a trump card to turn the tables in the face of adversity. That is, if Elsie Kevin could force him to use his trump card. Dake raised his eyebrows and looked at the opposite side. Elsie Kevin was obviously impatient. Both sides stared at each other fiercely, and then pulled out the crucial magic card from their hands at the same time. Their lips moved quickly, and their voices echoed through the stadium through the loudspeaker. They were almost synchronized. The atmosphere of the duel was instantly heightened. The commentator, Jessica, was silent again. The audience didn't need to be guided, and had already divided into 2 camps. In the name of Dake Dimming, I summoned the Pride. In the name of Elsie Kevin, I summoned the Mechanical Core. A strong aura rushed out from the 2 magic cards and fiercely collided with each other before the summoning. In the red side, the Pride's light gathered on the earthen Tyrannosaurus. In the blue side, the Mechanical Core shone on the ancient mechanical giant's chest. The 2 magic fairies let out a deafening roar at the same time. The terrifying aura of dark decay and the majestic aura of the ancient civilization soared into the sky and divided the entire duel stadium into 2 sides, black and white. Duel. 63 of 139. I'm asleep, sleepy. Today is also a day where I can't get a ticket even if I begged for it. Go out and buy some food. Try to get up early to write. I feel like I'm back to normal. Recently, my whole body has been aching. Everyone needs to be healthy. Chapter 644. Roar. The earthen Tyrannosaurus's already large body instantly grew taller under the light of pride. In the blink of an eye, it had surpassed the height of the contestant stage and reached a height of more than 10 meters. When the black light dissipated, the ferocious bone dragon with white bones on its back revealed its gigantic body in front of thousands of spectators. Earthen Tyrannosaurus Super Evolution. Zombie Tyrannosaurus. The zombie Tyrannosaurus' flesh had long disappeared, leaving only a pale white skeleton. As soon as it appeared, it opened its arms, leaned forward, and roared loudly. In its empty eye sockets, the green ghost fire burned wildly. A dark aura surrounded its entire body. But it did not completely lose control like the first evolution. Although it was only a little, but deep in its eyes, there was still a bottom line of rationality. First website. https://m. VIP Kanchu. VIP card name, Zombie Tyrannosaurus type. Elven card, level. Race, undying, attribute. Dark/dragon magic power. 2800, attack. 3800 defense. 3200, ultimate skill. Type 0 cruise missile, annihilation hunting bird, curse breath death claw, compared to it. After the mechanical core was installed, the ancient mechanical giant's body did not change at all. It was only about the same height as the contestant stage. However, its silver-white mechanical body was glowing with a white light. The mask on its face was slit open, revealing a more delicate human face. Other than that, there were obvious changes in its details. And the cracks on its body caused by heavy stomp and earthquake were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Clearly, the machinery core did have a powerful effect on the primordial machinery, similar to the Nirvana rebirth. Card name, Ancient Mechanical Giant Mechanical Core. Type, Elven card, level. Race, Mechanical Giant, attribute, Steel, magic power. 3600. Attack, 4000 plus 300. Defense, 3500 plus 300. Ultimate skill, Million-ton steel fist, mechanical revolution, supernuclear source cannon. A ancient machine with a machine core. Installed as a complete ancient machine. Elsie Kevin put down the magic card in the air and stared at the zombie Tyrannosaurus that was emitting a terrifying aura. After the mechanical core was installed in the ancient mechanical giant, not only would its mana recover to its maximum, its physical strength would also be truly developed. Its maximum mana would be increased by 1,000 points, its attack would be increased by 1/3, and its defense would be increased by 1/6, up to 1,000 points. New ultimate skill, Super Nuclear Source Cannon. He was fully confident that the present ancient mecha giant would be able to crush its opponents in terms of basic strength, even if Dake's enchanted sprite had been terrifyingly strengthened. Not to mention, ancient mecha giant had also activated mechanical revolution. 6 seconds later, it would summon another ancient machine, increasing its attack and defense by 300 points. At that time, in terms of pure data, the ancient mecha giant was comparable to a 9-star magic guide fairy. This was the strongest trump card he had at the moment. This was also the source of his confidence. After all, what he held in his hands was the only remaining machine core in the world. Even if this machine core couldn't be compared to those god cards, it wouldn't be too far off. Once he successfully summoned a 6-star ancient machine and installed the machine core, he would even dare to fight against the elites of the 6th years. In this year's school championship competition, he would stand on a higher stage and recreate the glory of the ancient machine. With such confidence, Elsie Kevin ordered the ancient mecha giant to attack. It's time, Million-ton steel fist. The ancient mecha giant clenched its fist once more. The white light that burst out from its palm was several times more dazzling than before, like a blazing sun, bursting with divine power. However, on the red team's platform, Dake Dimming pressed down on his cards and whispered, "See, this is the stage you wanted the most. It's time to wake up, Zombie Tyrannosaurus." At that moment, the zombie Tyrannosaurus' eyes were filled with endless battle lust. That little bit of rationality that was hidden deep in its heart finally surfaced. Facing the ancient mecha giant, whose star level, magic power, attack, and defense were all higher than itself, it didn't have a trace of fear. Instead, it charged forward without any hesitation. Whether it was the zombie Tyrannosaurus or the ancient mecha giant, they weren't speed players. The two third-tier magic guide spirits met in the middle of the field. The ancient mecha giant raised its steel fist like a blazing sun and punched towards the zombie Tyrannosaurus' pelvis. However, the zombie Tyrannosaurus suddenly bent its back, the power of death swirling around its 10 fingers like a storm, turning its pale white bone claws into a pitch-black color. Sure kill skill. Death Claw. Under the buff of Death Claw, the zombie Tyrannosaurus' attack power was increased by 1,000 points, and every attack had external corrosive damage. There was a huge difference in size between the two sides. Even though the ancient mecha giant's aura wasn't weak at all, the zombie Tyrannosaurus still looked like it was bullying a child, its death claw ruthlessly piercing into the sides of the ancient mecha giant. The ancient mecha giant, that had a total of 3,800 points of defense after stacking, was easily pierced by the death claw. The zombie Tyrannosaurus roared furiously, its fingers still pierced into its body as it lifted the ancient mecha giant up high. The ancient mecha giant, that was as heavy as a mountain, was actually lifted up into the air. As for its right steel fist, just as it touched the ancient mecha giant's pelvis, its feet left the ground and its body was pulled back, unable to truly exert its power. That surge of power hadn't been exhausted and was still gathering in its palm. It suddenly opened its 5 fingers and grabbed the zombie Tyrannosaurus' arm, the million-ton steel fist. Energy fiercely poured in. Gotcha! The zombie Tyrannosaurus' left arm was actually broken from the elbow. However, after suffering such a heavy injury, the zombie Tyrannosaurus became even more violent as it opened its mouth and spat out a curse breath. The pitch-black breath that had a corrosive effect dyed half of the ancient mecha giant's body black. Its body was visibly weakened. Although its stats didn't change, the extent of its struggle suddenly decreased. The zombie Tyrannosaurus roared and swung its right arm fiercely, flinging it to the ground. Bam! With a loud bang, the ancient mecha giant was smashed into the ground. The dust and smoke that erupted from the impact swallowed its body. In the name of Elsie Kevin, I summoned the ancient mecha component Steel. On the blue team's platform, Elsie Kevin completed her chant in a slightly hurried manner. As the usual summoning spell proceeded, a white light shot out from the magic card and landed on the blue team's summoning area. A 2-meter-long mechanical spear floated in the air and appeared. Card name: Ancient Mecha Component Electricity. Type: Elf card. Level: *****. Race: Mecha. Attribute: Steel/Electricity. Magic power: 1000. Attack: 1500. Defense: 1000. Ultimate skill: Hypercore Assembly Thunder Spear. The white light that suddenly shot out from the dust and connected with the ancient mecha component, electricity. The ancient mecha giant's attack and defense increased by another 300. Relying on its hard exterior armor, although it looked like it was in a mess, it actually didn't suffer much damage. At this time, using the opportunity of mechanical revolution taking effect again, ancient mecha giant suddenly straightened its body from the pit. That huge steel body was faintly discernible in the dust. It suddenly raised its hand, and the ancient mecha component, electricity, suddenly flew over and was firmly grasped in its hand. The outer shell of the spear instantly separated, the body of the spear elongated to both ends, and there was a light connecting between the shells, turning it into a 4-meter-long giant spear. It stabbed the spear into the ground, and its whole body stood up with the help of the force, assuming a posture that was not much different from before. Then the wrist holding the spear gently turned, and the spear instantly flashed with electricity. In the blink of an eye, the ancient mecha component electricity turned into a thunder spear. Even so, Dake Dimming on the red team's platform was still coldly watching. At this time, the zombie Tyrannosaurus' left arm was cut off at the elbow. The ancient mecha giant not only received a further enhancement from mechanical revolution, it also received a new weapon. The zombie Tyrannosaurus' disadvantage was completely revealed. Thunder Spear assassinate it. Elsie Kevin pressed his hand on the card table and stared at the battle in the field with full concentration. He already felt that the victory was in his hands. The ancient mecha giant held the thunder spear in its hand. Thunder and lightning flowed through its body, dispersing the dark curse. Its body shook, and it rushed forward with the spear. Every step it took shook the ground, and its momentum rose steadily. Roar, but the zombie Tyrannosaurus still roared at it without fear. Type 0 cruise missile. Finally, Dake Dimming on the red team's platform slowly said the name of the killing move. The zombie Tyrannosaurus faced the imposing, ancient mecha giant, and suddenly crouched down. The remaining flesh on its spine wriggled crazily, and an organic missile made of fresh red flesh slowly drilled out. Following the appearance of the missile, a bloody red mist mixed with a dark aura quietly spread out. The zombie Tyrannosaurus' body repeatedly emitted a terrifying aura of destruction that was madly brewing. In the audience seats, countless students, professors, and spectators could not help but be attracted to it. The ancient mecha giant was clearly stronger than the zombie Tyrannosaurus in terms of star level, attributes, and status, but the zombie Tyrannosaurus' presence was far stronger than the ancient mecha giant. It was as if all the spotlights were shining on it. Such a different situation. Elsie Kevin naturally noticed it. His gaze fell on the organic missile, and suddenly he had an extremely ominous premonition. The next second he instantly changed his strategy and roared at the ancient mecha giant. Ancient mecha giant. Super nuclear source cannon. The ancient mecha giant suddenly stopped, and the spear that was about to thrust out was retracted. It stood straight and slightly leaned back. The mecha core on its chest rotated and expanded, revealing the body of the mecha core. Then, a blazing white light burst out from the machinery core. With half of its maximum MP as the price, the ancient mecha giant fired the super nuclear source cannon at the zombie Tyrannosaurus. And on the zombie Tyrannosaurus' spine, the Type 0 cruise missile had already been fired. The flesh and blood missile drew a crooked arc in the air and was about to hit the ancient mecha giant in the next second. The super nuclear source cannon just happened to explode. The instantly expanding white light pillar blocked the path of the Type 0 cruise missile, causing it to explode in the air. Kaboom! An explosion even more terrifying than the Tengu of the nine-tailed fox was produced between the two. The blazing heat wave and white light from the explosion covered the entire field of vision. The audience endured the stimulation and tried their best to widen their eyes, only to see the entire field being engulfed by the explosion. After the earthquake, the duel stage once again shook violently. Although Dake Dimming on the red platform was standing steadily, Elsie Kevin on the blue platform had no choice but to grab onto something fixed, her face pale. Commentator Jessica Gardner's scream was only raised for a moment before it was swallowed up. The entire stadium became deathly silent amidst the terrifying explosion. The explosion stopped. Roar! The zombie Tyrannosaurus raised its head and roared. Its dark and terrifying aura broke through the billowing smoke and dust, completely revealing itself. And the ancient mecha giant that was in the center of the explosion had completely disappeared. It was insta-killed. When the audience's hearts suddenly produced this inconceivable thought, Jessica Gardner, who was on the commentary platform, also quickly craned her neck to look at the field. But in the middle of the smoke and dust, the huge figure of the ancient mecha giant had indeed disappeared. No, it hasn't fallen yet. Jessica Gardner abruptly yelled. Contestant Elsie Kevin has activated the secret device. The body of the ancient mecha giant is quickly recovering in the electronic furnace. The brief silence of the audience was instantly broken by this news. The audience that supported Elsie Kevin immediately shouted excitedly, even though many of them did not know what the electronic furnace was and where it was on the blue team's platform. Elsie Kevin was already sweating profusely. He had never imagined that a 7-star magic conducting fairy could actually release such a terrifying surekill skill. That Type 0 cruise missile, even after being partially offset by the hypernuclear energy cannon. No, in fact the energy of the hypernuclear energy cannon was also rebounded by the Type 0 cruise missile's explosion, which almost instantly vaporized his ancient mecha giant. And the ancient mecha component electricity that was also in the center of the explosion was really vaporized. Although the zombie Tyrannosaurus also suffered from the aftermath of the explosion, it was still standing strong. If he did not activate the secret device in the blue platform beforehand, he would have completely lost by now. Thank goodness. When the smoke and dust dispersed, the ancient mecha giant that Jessica had mentioned was finally revealed in front of the audience. On the red platform, Dake could not help but watch curiously. Early on when Elsie Kevin was setting up the ritual, he had already guessed it, but he still did not expect it to be the resurrection of the dead type of secret device. He saw that the chrysanthemum that covered the blue platform had already curled into a ball. Although he could not see it, the ancient mecha giant was obviously wrapped in this chrysanthemum-like giant furnace. When this furnace bloomed, the ancient mecha giant might be reborn in a new state. When a Magus successfully refined this type of magic card, it would definitely be placed in the deck. Dake could not help but feel envious, but he was not worried at all. If you have the ability, let's see if you can be reborn again. He did not even use the Underworld Soul Ring. He just pulled out 2 more magic cards from the top of the deck at the end of the round, and continued to watch. Elsie Kevin also pulled out 2 cards. Although he had bet everything on the ancient mecha giant, if he could pull out 1 or 2 more ancient mecha components, he could still further enhance the combat power of the ancient mecha giant. However, this time, the 2 new magic cards he pulled out were of no help to the current situation. He suddenly stared at the ancient mecha giant on the platform and hurriedly said, "Ancient mecha giant, return to the battlefield." Puff! The outer shell of the ancient mecha giant burst open. Viscous liquid gushed out from within, and the drenched, ancient mecha giant slowly opened its eyes. Its aura was even purer after its rebirth, and the 3 sure kill skills were also reset. The white line that shot out from its eyes connected with the ancient mecha component, Fly, increasing its attack and defense by 300 points. However, this bit of attack and defense was just a drop in the bucket. But such a terrifying sure kill skill, it's impossible that it doesn't have a cooldown. That bone dragon can't release 2 missiles consecutively. Elsie Kevin followed common sense and made a judgment. Then he immediately ordered the ancient mecha giant. Another round, super nuclear source cannon. The ancient mecha giant eyes flashed, the android mecha core chest armor rotated outwards, and began to gather energy once again. However, at the same time, Dake dimming on the red team's platform also said in a deep voice, "Next round, Annihilation Hunting Bird." Roar! The zombie Tyrannosaurus crouched down again, the remaining flesh on its spine wriggled crazily, and actually produced a second organic missile from within. The moment he saw the missile, Elsie Kevin's face could not help but contort. Dake Diming's bone dragon subverted common sense. But in reality, the Annihilation Hunting Bird was not the Type 0 cruise missile. It was faster and stronger than the Type 0 cruise missile, and with the added tracking ability, the explosion range was also wider. The zombie Tyrannosaurus and the ancient mecha giant, as though history was repeating itself, once again fired their strongest sure kill skills. Annihilation Hunting Bird versus Super Nuclear Source Cannon. From the zombie Tyrannosaurus' spine, a terrifying missile made of flesh and blood finally shot out. And the Super Nuclear Source Cannon also shot out from the ancient mecha giant's chest. The flesh and blood missile and the energy beam cannon. This time around the zombie Tyrannosaurus' position collided. But the final result, it would not change. The shockwave of the explosion surged in the direction of the ancient mecha giant. Even if the ancient mecha giant wanted to dodge, the Annihilation Hunting Bird's area of effect was too wide. In the blink of an eye, it was once again engulfed by the flames of the explosion. No one would have thought the sure kill skill of a 7-star magic guide elf could actually crush the strongest sure kill skill of an 8-star magic guide elf. In the face of such a terrifying difference in sure kill skills, the slight difference in 3 sizes was simply meaningless. Rumble! The sound of the explosion resounded throughout the entire arena, completely drowning out the shouts of the tens of thousands of spectators. The blazing wind blew towards the blue arena, but was blocked out by the barrier of the contestant stage. Elsie Kevin watched the shocking explosion, his face pale to the extreme. As the owner of the ancient mecha giant, he had already known the result. A miracle did not happen. After several rounds of fierce fighting, the ancient mecha giant finally fell. Without a sure-kill defensive sure-kill skill, the ancient mecha giant's physique alone could not withstand those two missiles. Elsie Kevin suddenly realized that sure-kill skills were the true soul of Magic Guide elves. Pure accumulation of numbers, in the face of a truly powerful sure-kill skill, was so weak and pale. He took a deep breath, his eyes flickering nonstop. Up until now he had given his all in this duel. There were no more excuses to speak of. He was not as hysterical as the first time he was defeated by Dake. Instead, before the smoke and dust of the explosion dispersed, he silently stacked the cards in his hand together, then slowly waited for the dust to settle. Magic Guide duels were filled with the element of luck. But sometimes, no matter how good luck was, it could not make up for the difference in strength. Elsie Kevin originally thought that after obtaining the mechanical core, his strength had improved far beyond what a normal third-year student could achieve. However, as you move forward, so does your opponent. Dake Dimung, obviously, had improved much faster than him. The smoke and dust has not dispersed, but the contestant with both hands has stopped moving. Commentator Jessica Gardner's voice slowly sounded after the explosion stopped. As a professional commentator, I have never been stingy with my bold judgment. The ancient mecha giant could not have survived such a terrifying explosion. Elsie Kevin's defeat is already unchangeable. Let us congratulate Dake Dimung in advance. In the first duel of the Golden Cup, he defeated a third-year student with absolute strength. Asterisk, Papa Papa. Amidst the cheers of the audience, the zombie Tyrannosaurus, standing in the middle of the field, gradually revealed itself. The green flames in its eye sockets jumped wildly. Only the white bones of its ferocious body remained standing like a demon god. The ancient mecha giant's huge body had turned into dust. It was invincible in front of it. Almost at the same time, the blue magic guide ball's life enchantment was completely shattered by the dream demon. Elsie Kevin was fully focused on the battle between the zombie Tyrannosaurus and the ancient mecha giant. He had no time to care about the magic guide ball in the air. Ancient mecha component, Fly, could not receive the order of the Archmage, so it could only be played around by the Dream Demon. The life enchantment with 8,000 mana was destroyed by the little Dream Demon just like that. Then it giggled as it picked up the blue magic guide ball and flew towards Dake's platform. The judge of the duel finally came back to his senses and announced the result of the duel. The duel is over. The winner is still the second-year student Dake Dimung. Why is it still the same? The judge couldn't help but murmur after the announcement. At this moment, the audience who had finally confirmed the result of the duel finally gave an even louder applause than before. The Dake Dimung fan club that had spontaneously gathered also waved their flags vigorously in the audience, their faces flushed with excitement. In the front row of the duel hall, Arvette excitedly grabbed Galileo's meat, while the elder prince next to her whispered something to the chief archbishop next to him. The audience who paid attention to the duel whispered to each other about the second-year student who won on the stage. More and more people knew that this was the designer of the duel, the most precious son of the Valkyrie. On the stage, on the blue platform, Elsie Kevin reached out and put the remaining ancient mechanical component, Fly, into her magic guide card. She then smiled bitterly and said to the opposite side, "I really didn't expect this." Dake looked up and asked curiously, "Didn't expect what?" Elsie Kevin said, "I did expect to lose, but I didn't expect to lose under such circumstances. How did you become so strong?" "Forget it, this isn't a suitable topic to ask. I was too impulsive. Anyway, I accept this defeat wholeheartedly. I hope you can go further in the Gold Cup. To be honest, I want to see you in the top 16, or even the top 8. Dake paused for a moment, then said humbly, "Isn't that a bit difficult?" Elsie Kevin shook her head. "Isn't it only fun when it's difficult? As a loser, I will also challenge you in the next match." Dake couldn't help but smile. "I'm looking forward to it." Elsie Kevin forced a smile. "Well, I'll go first." Saying that, he took the deck out of the card slot, sorted it out with the magic card in his hand, put it in the card bag and walked down. Watching Elsie Kevin walk down the stage, Dake shook his head slightly and put the wishful dice in his hand into the deck. He then picked up the magic guide cards of the magic elves and was about to put them back into the card. However, as soon as he put the orb sea lion and Snorlax beast into the card, a ripple appeared beside him. Senior sister Judy, who had appeared beside him through spatial teleportation, brought with her a sweet fragrance. "Seems like you're used to the interview?" Senior Judy said with a smile. Dake said, 3 minutes. Senior Judy nodded, 3 minutes. She then immediately said to the audience, whose applause was gradually dying down, "Now let's begin the winner's interview. I believe that the regular audience knows that Elsie Kevin is by no means a weakling. His good performance in this duel has proved this point. However, the final winner of this duel is not Elsie Kevin, but our second year, Dake Dimong." Applause sounded again. Senior Judy bowed slightly and said, "So Junior Dimong, can you tell us how you feel after defeating a third-year senior?" Dake took the microphone and said politely, "Because it's not the first time, the feeling isn't very deep. However, Senior Elsie Kevin can always wake me up. I did experience the joy of a duel from him." "Surprise?" Senior Judy asked. "Are you talking about the 8-star, ancient mechanical giant?" Dake smiled. "Of course I'm talking about the mechanical core. To be honest, Senior and I happen to be classmates in the alchemy class. I'm really envious that Senior has access to the mechanical core information." Senior Judy thought for a bit and asked curiously, "So it's the mechanical core? If I remember correctly, there should only be one mechanical core left?" Dake shrugged and said, "That seems to be the case, but we all know that many people don't want to reveal their treasures to the public." "That's true." Senior Judy casually changed the topic. "Then can you tell us the name of the bone dragon? I'm backstage so I can't see the card's name clearly." Dake nodded slightly and said, "It's the zombie Tyrannosaurus." Meow, Little Dream Demon hugged the magic conducting ball and shook it outside the barrier. Dake pointed at the magic conducting ball and then pointed at the opposite side. Little Dream Demon pouted and flew to the opposite side to put the magic conducting ball back into the blue summoning area. Dake then noticed the zombie Tyrannosaurus that hadn't been put back into the magic conducting card. He had an idea and said, "Can you give it a round of applause?" Senior Judy's eyes lit up as she turned around and said, "Of course you can. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to the zombie Tyrannosaurus that gave us an exciting duel today." Suddenly, the applause was like thunder, and the shouts were like waves. The zombie Tyrannosaurus' eyes gradually became more rational. It suddenly opened its mouth and roared. The cursed breath that came out of its mouth rushed into the sky. It was as if it was responding to the audience's applause. This new feeling made the audience's applause even louder. The zombie Tyrannosaurus' hideous face that lacked flesh miraculously showed a visible smile. When Dake saw that smile, he couldn't help but smile as well. Then he slowly picked up the magic conducting card and put the zombie Tyrannosaurus and Dream Demon back into the card. The interview ended there. Senior Judy didn't ask any more questions. Dake walked down from the contestant's seat and walked towards the contestant's passage. It was the first day of the Golden Cup. Like most of the students, he was prepared to watch the duels until night time. Observing the duels of the senior students from time to time would allow one to benefit greatly. Not long after, Dake returned to the spectator's seat. Doran excitedly waved his fist at him and said in a low voice, "I've been unhappy with Elsie Kevin for a long time, but I didn't expect him to be so strong. Luckily it's you." Dake sat down and asked curiously, "Senior Kevin, he's not bad, right?" Doran fiercely shook his head. "I don't know if he's good or not, but every time I walk past him, he's always arrogant. If I didn't know, I would have thought that everyone owed him a few 100,000 credits." Dake suddenly said, "Oh, that's it. There are always people who are good at communication, and people who aren't. Or maybe he's just like that." Doran shook his head and said, "I've seen a lot of people like that in the circle. They always think that they're a cut above others and look down on others." Dake touched his nose. Whether you're right or not, he shouldn't have such thoughts now, right? Doran was stunned and then smiled. It's you who made me understand that all living things are equal. Dake couldn't help but show a surprised expression. In this aristocratic society, and as an aristocrat, he could actually say something like that. Did Doran have a fever? But Doran quickly said, after all, below you are all living things. Dake, that's a bit stiff, Doran. Doran patted his chest and said sincerely, what do you mean by stiff? I'm just speaking my mind. But Luo C and Deanna, who were on the other side of Dake, had already laughed out loud. The following matches were basically the performances of the seniors. Other than Dark, the only other second-year student who was included in today's duel wasn't the hero's son, W.V. God. It was the sage of the ancients, S. daughter, Saraswati. Moreover, Saraswati had actually won a duel with a third-year student, which had caused a huge commotion. When Senior Judy interviewed her, she very humbly said, I'm still far from it. I'll continue to work hard to improve. I'll try to get closer to that person, and so on. When Senior Judy asked her who that person was, she deliberately looked in Dake's direction and said, of course, it's that person. Senior Sister Judy blinked and immediately understood. Then she deliberately said, I think that person should have heard your confession. Then, do you have anything else to say? Sarah withdrew her gaze and said with a smile, nope. Thus she walked down the stage. From then until dinner time, there were all kinds of exciting seniors matches. There were duels between people of the same grade, 4th grade against 5th grade, or 3rd grade against 4th grade. But in a situation where both sides were excellent students who were good at duels, it was very difficult to challenge someone one level higher. And the star contestant that the audience had been waiting for finally appeared in the last match in the afternoon. It was the duel between the 4th year's Winnie Scardy and the 5th year's popular contestant. In this cross-level challenge, both contestants displayed extremely exciting tactics and high-strength magic guide sprites. The 8-star magic guide sprites standing in the middle of the stage caused waves of exclamations. The shocking scene was not inferior to the battle between the zombie Tyrannosaurus and the ancient mechanical giant. Although Winnie Scardy won in the end, she only won by half a step. The 5th-year student who was regretfully defeated hammered the table hard before turning to leave. Obviously, to him, the fact that he was defeated by a junior was a huge humiliation. Even though Winnie repeatedly expressed in the post-match interview that she was lucky to win this duel, it did not extinguish his anger. Perhaps only by winning again on the duel stage could he wash away the shame. Most of the students in the Shungmalian Academy had similar thoughts. After this duel, the audience inside and outside the stadium got up one after another. The students and professors in the academy went to the cafeteria to eat, while the audience in the branches went to the cafeteria to eat. After dinner, at 7 o'clock sharp, it was time for the evening matches to officially begin. And in the evening matches, the last match that attracted the attention of countless people was the Silver Dragon Lady, Panduola Doragon vs. Knight Baron, Noah Sharp. Although Noah Sharp was already a 6th-year student, he still signed up for this Golden Cup. But according to past practice, most of the 6th-year students would give up halfway through the competition. They needed to spend more time on graduation projects. The graduation rate of the Shungmalian Academy was not 100%. Once you repeated a year, you would be completely hung on the pillar of shame. And if you failed to pass the graduation examination after repeating a year, you would have no chance to graduate. Although there were not many people in the Shungmalian Academy who could not graduate after studying hard for 7 years, there were still some. Therefore, according to Dake's understanding, tonight's final duel was mostly performative. But even so, he, like almost all the audience, was full of anticipation. But before that, he needed to win his own duel. He would be on the stage again in the 6th match of the evening matches. And this time his opponent was a 4th-year student. 4th-year House of Nobles Snake Harriman. Dake did not have much of an impression of the name Snake Harriman. But since even the 3rd-year Elsie Kevin had a super trump card like the Mechanical Core, then it would not be surprising if this senior Snake Harriman was even more difficult to deal with. To be honest, he was a little excited. And in the seat not far from him, Snake Harriman himself was also looking forward to this duel. He clasped his hands together, placed them under his chin, and observed Dake Diming's back from the side. His eyes flickered slightly, and he could not help but grin. Hiss! From his collar, a small snake as thick as a finger suddenly drilled out, climbing all the way from his shoulder to his wrist, and interacting intimately with his fingers. The classmates beside him seemed to be used to it, and chatted with him casually. He was also looking forward to tonight's duel. 67 of 139. I'm finally done. I can sleep. My routine has collapsed again. Good night. Congratulations to EDG for winning the championship. Please vote. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.